Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being with us online and here in this wonderful place at Centro Aldo Moro. So, welcome to the fifth edition of the Eurovisions International Conference. We are very, very happy and very proud to be here in Torino after 2 years online. Torino, it's a lovely city, wonderful city, and we are feeling very welcomed here. So before we start, let me tell you a bit of Eurovision's conference history. So in 2013, I met Irving Volter, here, my colleague in Malmo, in a conference about the Eurovision Song Contest. And we stayed in contact since then. But were no more conference about this, and we didn't have the opportunity to meet again in a conference. And then after Portugal's winning in Kiev in 2017, Irving called me and asked me, what do you think to organize a conference about Eurovision Song Contest in Lisbon? So I agreed, and this is how Eurovision's conference was born. We made two sessions in 2018, one session in February for the Portuguese audience in Portuguese, and other in May during the Eurovision Song Contest week. So our goal since the beginning was to gather in the same place those who make Eurovision Song Contest happen. Musicians, TV professionals, fans, as well as established academics and early careers researchers. So in that sense, we organized roundtables, academics papers, and a science slam. Our goal is always to gather together people that are interested in Eurovision Song Contest, as well maybe those that don't like it or they are not interested. So it is an opportunity to share knowledge, to share ideas to those everywhere in each corner of our world. So we want to create a stage for different visions about the Eurovision Song Contest, about music, about Europe, so several Eurovisions. So in the next year, Carla Figueira, here a little bit hidden, joined us, and we went to Tel Aviv and we organized Eurovisions there. But in the next day, pandemics came, we were forced to be at home, and we decided to organize with Isabel Campelo with us the two sessions in 2020 and 2021 online. So online was a big challenge, but also a big opportunity to gather new audiences and people around the world. So it's our goal also, this is why we are streaming, to have people here in the room, but also to gather people online. So this year, we contact Jacopo Tomatis and Giulia Mugeo, who accept to help us and to integrate Eurovision's conference in a program events dedicated to the Eurovision Song Contest. So as you see, this conference, it's only possible with the effort of a team, our team, but also with the help of good friends and good colleagues. So I need to acknowledge to Jacopo Tomatis and Giulia Mugeo. Thank you so much for receiving us in Università degli Studi di Torino. We have to thanks to our scientific committee from Nova University of Lisbon, Professor João Soeiro de Carvalho, Professor São José Corte Real, and Professor Salwa Castelo Branco. And of course, our dear speakers, panelists, science slammers for these 2 days. Thank you for being with us. And thanks a lot for accepting our invitation and for sharing your knowledge and your time with us. We are very, very happy. I have to thanks also to Korjun for the musical interludes, Irving students at FHM Hanover for the collaboration in the communication strategy, to Sandra, Bjarne, Sharon, Leah, and Jerome. Thank you. Also to Gonçalo Antunes de Oliveira in Lisbon for the amazing website, Gonçalo Conceição for the design, and last but not least, this amazing audience here online. We hope you enjoyed the conference. We hope to share a lot of ideas here. And I will pass my word to Isabel in Lisbon online to welcome you. So again, thank you.
Greetings from sunny Portugal and a very warm welcome to all Eurovision's fans, researchers, and all enthusiasts in general. My name is Isabel Campillo, and I'm a member of the Eurovision's research group, together with Sofia Lopes, Irving Voter, and Carla Figueira, who are with you today, at this very day, and tomorrow in the city of Turin. As you may have noticed, I won't be able to be in person in the city of Turin, but I am joining our conference through our YouTube channel. So please, for all of you, for those of you who won't be able to be in Turin for these 2 days, please join us via YouTube. Let me tell you a little bit about today. So today we have our Science Slam, where we will have very promising young researchers. We will have a fantastic keynote speaker, Jacopo Tomatis, from the University of Turin, and we will have a book presentation about the Eurovision by its editors, Adam Dubbin and Dean Pouletic. Together with all this, we will also have musical interludes by Kojun. So please join us in the first day of our Eurovision's conference this year in its 5th edition, and have fun.
And we're back in the room here in Turin, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's keynote, Jacopo Tomatis. Jacopo is a musicologist, music critic, and a musician. He is a research fellow at the University degli Studi di Torino, where he teaches popular music and ethnomusicology. His main research interests are in Italian popular music from the 1920s to the present day, with particular reference to media and cultural history. His first book, Storia culturale della canzone italiana, won the International Association for the Study of Popular Music Book Prize in 2021. So with you, please welcome Jacopo Tomatis.
Thank you very much. So, welcome to the University of Torino. We are really, really pleased to have you here, and thank you for organizing this conference within our program. We are really proud to have you here. This is a great opportunity, and so we are even more proud and happy to have you here in the flesh, alive after 2 years of online conference, which are great, but real conferences are better, I must say. So, I will start my, okay. So I am not a Eurovision scholar, which is an odd thing to declare at the opening of a keynote speech dedicated to Eurovision, of course, for a research group working on Eurovision by the organizer of a recent international conference about Eurovision in the city that hosts Eurovision. So I'm not an expert, I would say that. Actually, me not being an expert is also a consequence of the role that the show that Eurovision has had, or rather has not had in Italy. The status of Eurovision in my country, as perceived by audiences, artists, professionals, and scholars too, speaks volumes about the cultural history of Eurovision itself and the cultural history of popular music in Italy. The distracted attitude with which Torino prepared for the event actually reveals how little interest Eurovision has traditionally attracted among Italians, or at least among Italians in Italy, as we will see. Also, Italy's lack of attention to Eurovision over the last 30 to 40 years, coupled with the difficulty popular music studies have had in establishing themselves in the Italian academia, has resulted in a lack of scholarly interest as well. In the opening of his now classic 1982 article analyzing popular music, theory, method, and practice, Philip Tagg, one of the founding fathers of our discipline, wrote And you can go to the second slide, thank you. One of the initial problems for any new field of study is the attitude of incredulity it meets. The serious study of popular music is no exception to this rule. It's often confronted with an attitude of bemused suspicion, implying that there is something weird about taking fun seriously or finding fun in serious things. Well, such attitudes of bemused suspicion are also an appropriate introduction to the path I want to follow, and we can go to the second slide, next slide. We can actually replace popular music with Eurovision here, and it works quite well, I would say. So this paper is based on my research. Next slide, thank you very much. My research work on the history of Italian popular music, which will now include Eurovision more and more, I must say thanks to you. The many useful contributions that emerged from the conference song context, transmedia perspective on Eurovision held last week here at this university, organized by me with my colleagues Giulia Muggeo and Gabriele Rigola, and with the support of the Dipartimento di Studi Umanistici and the University of Torino. And three, the reflections of an Italian music scholar who, over the last 6 to 7 months, has been organizing an international conference on Eurovision in the bemused suspicion of much of the world around him, including himself. So I will start asking myself this question. What does it mean to study Eurovision in Italy and from an Italian perspective? So let's start. Eurovision in Torino. Torino has a complicated relationship with large-scale events. Often obscured by the shadow of Milan, or obsessed by the shadow of Milan, I must say, Turin has always oscillated between a very provincial enthusiasm that considers every success of the administrations as an epoch-making victory, and a constant grumbling towards the public sphere. This is particularly true after the 2006 Winter Olympics, which marked a period of major cultural growth for the city, later crushed by the 2008 crisis. This kind of schizophrenia does not worry us Torinesi too much, I must say. Last November, for example, the city was thrilled for several weeks by the arrival of the ATP Finals, one of the world's top tennis events. Oddly enough, but not too oddly if you follow me, in October, few people reacted with the same enthusiasm to the announcement that Torino would host Eurovision, and even fewer followed with any interest the complex procedure that in the previous months had included Turin in a short list of possible hosting cities, along with Bologna, Pesaro, Rimini, and our arch nemesis Milano. Still on the eve on the show, one gets the impression that many people in the city have not really understood what Eurovision is about and its scale. 20 days before the festival, with hotels at stellar prices for months and tickets for the show sold out within the hour, it was somehow tender that the city's daily newspaper, La Stampa, had to motivate its reader by reminding them that Eurovision, quote, resembles the classic opportunity not to be missed, a moment to find ourselves and be made attractive again. In the meanwhile, the organization of our conference began, amidst the bemused suspicion of many, with the notable exception, we must declare, and luckily, of the University of Torino, which supported and financed the project. So thanks again to the University of Torino for supporting us. To understand the attitude of the people of Torino, you can go to the next slide, thank you. It is useful to briefly review the history of the relationship between Italy and Eurovision. Italy is one of the founding countries, as you know. As you surely know, Eurovision was born in 1956 on the initiative of the European Broadcasting Union and modeled its format on that of the Sanremo Festival, launched in 1951 by RAI, our national broadcaster. TV arrived in Italy in 1954, so first difference is that Sanremo was born for the radio and Eurovision for television as well. Italy took part in the competition regularly from 1956 to 1980. It won in 1956 with Gigliola Cinquetti, who also got a second place in 1974, beaten only by Waterloo by ABBA, which is like losing the Champions League with the great Real. So go Gigliola. Gigliola will be here tomorrow for a public speech at 6 p.m. Please be there. It will be a great opportunity to discuss, and she will also sing and play some songs with a couple of musicians. Italy won to the disinterest of the Italian media in 1990 with Toto Cutugno. In 1991, Italy organized a show in Rome, an edition remembered by all as the worst edition ever. We have a slide for this, I think. Yes. Gigliola, Cinquetti, and Toto Cutugno hosted the event, but the show was designed for an Italian audience and mostly in Italian. The orchestra was put together at the last minute, so almost everything happened. It was not a great opportunity to showcase the ability of Italian people in organizing stuff. So we hope to do better this time. Italy did not compete again from 1994 to 1996, participated in 1997 with Fiumi di Parole by Jalis, who will be here tomorrow, who accused Rai of boycotting them. Rai actually seemed terrified of winning Eurovision and to have to host a new edition. So from 1998 to 2010, Italy was not in the competition. Rai ignored Eurovision, even going so far as to leave the rights for the 2003 edition to the gay.tv website. In 2011, Italy returned to the competition again, and this is recent history. In the meantime, however, Eurovision has changed and become more or less what it is now. It has grown unbeknownst to the Italian and the Turinese public as well. So, Italy's complex relationship with Eurovision can be only understood in relation to the Sanremo Festival. You can go to the next slide. Which, as you can imagine, on the contrary, generates an enormous interest in the Italian audiences. In fact, it is easy to say that Eurovision space in Italy has been filled by the Sanremo Festival. We must therefore read the history of Eurovision Italy report in relation to the history of the Sanremo Festival, but also to the policies of Rai that organizes the Sanremo Festival, and to the policies of the Italian music industry, which largely depends on the Sanremo Festival, even now. Survey on Italian sources, magazines, radio, etc., does not reveal a strong interest of the Italian media for Eurovision in any moment of history. Even in the 1950s and 60s, Eurovision's moments of greatest visibility in Italy, the coverage it received was not at all comparable to that of other Italian events, not only the Sanremo Festival, but also the numerous other festivals that were mushrooming in Italy in those years, Canzonissima to Castrocaro, Festival della Canzone di Napoli, and many, many more. So it is no coincidence then that Italy's first withdrawal in 1980 coincided with the relaunch of the Sanremo Festival after the crisis of the 1970s. From 1980 onwards, Sanremo became what it is today, a television event, and a European television event. In these years, Sanremo was recorded in playback from 1980 to 1989 actually. It was recorded in playback and adopted a new television aesthetic in depth to that developed by the new private televisions that were emerging in Italy in those years. Private television in Italy was born at the end of the 1970s. Since 1980, Sanremo is very much like a Eurovision. Eurovision is therefore a competitor of Sanremo. It serves neither Rai nor the Italian music industry to be part of it. So the complex relationship between Sanremo and Eurovision is indeed linked to some characteristic of the music industry in Italy, which are the centrality within the Italian popular music industry of business models oriented to domestic audiences, at least until recent years. The Italian music industry has always felt it had to sell music in Italy. It has never focused too much on exporting, and exceptions such as Domenico Modugno only prove the rule. Until the 1980s, the Italian music industry was largely dominated by major domestic publishing groups and adopted autarkic and conservative strategy, partly maintained also in the following decades. For this reason, too, the Italian music industry has always focused on Italianizing what came from abroad, also thanks to favorable copyright laws. For instance, until the end of the 1960s, at least, for instance, it was particularly convenient to translate foreign songs in Italian instead of publishing the original version, because they generated royalties and supported the domestic market. So the focus was on the domestic market. Eurovision was not supposed to help the domestic market. Eurovision served as a market for European music, of course, has served as a market for European music since the first edition, but Italy has never been particularly motivated to sell music and has never been interested in buying other music at all. So Italy has not been interested in Eurovision. However, next slide, please. Sorry. Oh, yes, but this one, okay. The link between Italy and Eurovision also concerns the construction of Italianness of song abroad and in Italy. So the second part of this paper, and I am perfectly on schedule, The second part of this paper will focus on these cultural processes, which have been an important part of my research in the past few years. We can go to the next slide, thank you. The first director of Rai TV, Sergio Pugliese, played a role in the creation of Eurovision as the Italian TV representative within the EBU. Like many public servants in Republican Italy, Pugliese was a former manager of EIAR, Ente Italiano Audizioni Radiofoniche, the national broadcaster during the fascist period. And Pugliese was largely compromised with the fascist regime, as many other public servants were. Several studies have shown the deep continuity between the fascist state and the republic, especially on the media front. Indeed, one cannot discuss the rise of sound media in Italy without connecting them to fascism. The fascist regime promoted radio as a popular medium and helped to promote a certain idea of Italian canzone, Italian song, as a form of propaganda. In this very period, what Franco Fabri called the Trentennio, the 30 years from the beginning of EIAR's activity at the end of the 1920s to 1958, the concept that 1958, with the rise of 45 RPM records and Domenico Modugno singing Volare, in this Trentennio, 30 years, which is a play on Ventennio, which are the 20 years of the fascist regime, the concept of Italian canzone, as we still know it today, was defined with the characteristic that we normally attribute to it. The idea of melodic singing, the romantic theme, the idea of melody and a particular way of delivering voices, etc. It is this model of Italian canzone that Rai, in the Republican era, promoted at the heart of the Sanremo Festival, and that characterized Italy's early years in Eurovision, and not only its early years in Eurovision. Sanremo was created with the intention of fostering the Italian canzone in the form of a revival of the good old song of yesteryear, so the good old song of the fascist period, basically. To demonstrate the continuity with fascism, one can recall how most functionaries, authors, musicians, orchestras, directors and singers who raised to success during the fascist period continued their career after the war. Sergio Pugliese, head of Rai TV, is a good example. But also Mauro Ruccione, author of the fascist anthemic song Faccetta Nera, meaning blackface. It's a very problematic song. Ruccione became one of the most successful authors of the first Sanremo era, writing the music for songs such as Corde della mia chitarra, first in Sanremo 1957, sixth at Eurovision 1957, sung by Nunzio Gallo, or Buongiorno Tristezza, winner of the 1954 festival, sung by Claudio Villa. And Giulio Razzi, for instance. Giulio Razzi was a former program director at the EIAR. After the racial laws in 1939, yes, I must remember, we also had racial laws in Italy. We are not proud of it. Razzi subscribed an official document excluding, quote, Jewish and Nigger authors, end quote, from the Italian radio. In the 1951, the same Giulio Razzi wrote the rules of the Sanremo Festival, on which Eurovision is based. So it's a complex connection with fascism. The problematic national meanings of Italian canzone as a genre were constructed during the Trentennio in a constant dialectic between internal perspectives promoted by Rai as the national public broadcaster and external ones developed in the gaze of others on us, and above all, in the context of the Italian diaspora in the world. From this point of view, the Eurovision of the early decades is crucial, especially for two songs. The first one is, of course, Nel blu dipinto di blu, Volare, Domenico Modugno, which did not win, but which remains the most important songs and the most popular song abroad, one of the few getting to the first place in the American chart as well. The second one is Gloria by Umberto Tozzi, I think. And the second song is, of course, Non ho l'età, sung by a 16-year-old Gigliola Cinquetti in 1964. I have a short video of Gigliola Cinquetti playing in Copenhagen in 1964, but we can skip this because I'm sure that we will discuss Gigliola later. A survey of Italian youth magazines of the time allows us to recognize the song's great success in Italy. Gigliola Cinquetti's popularity, however, cannot be compared to that of other stars of the period. Mina, Gianni Morandi, Caterina Caselli, Rita Pavone, that you can see in this beautiful picture. The most popular Italian youth press, youth magazine, Ciao Amici, writes in 1964, I translate, it was a success, Gigliola's success, it was a success that had no glamour or suddenness, because everyone liked Gigliola, and you couldn't help but love her, but she didn't make you do anything crazy. It is quite significant, in fact, that her records do not appear at the top of the Ciao Amici charts. But she does win festivals, a sign that she is liked, she is good, but she has not been able to impose her tender personality. And this is her style, after all. Gigliola does not attack the public, she softens the people. In other words, Gigliola Cinquetti is a young diva who does not only address to the youth community. Her image is comforting, not at all transgressive, just as comforting is the song Non ho l'età, in fact, a hymn to chastity as opposed to the frenzy of the young people of the 1960s. As you know, Non ho l'età means I do not have the age for do this, so okay, I won't do this. This means, doing stuff, probably. Thanks also to its intergenerational appeal, however, Non ho l'età became a great international success. I would suggest it was maybe more successful abroad than in Italy, and represents a crucial element in our understanding of how a certain idea of Italianness was constructed through songs, especially through the pathways of Italian emigrants. You can skip to the next one, thank you. In the spring of 2002, Gigliola Cinquetti donated her collection of letters to the Archivio della Scrittura Popolare del Museo Storico di Trento. The Cinquetti collection includes about 150,000 letters written by fans to express their affection or to tell their history, their story. They ask for money, they just say, I love you, Gigliola, they ask for suggestion. It's really a very touchful way of entering connection with fandom. Eurovision itself, okay, something is happening on my right, I will just ignore it. Eurovision itself played a central role, helping to bring the image of this 16-year-old Cinquetti to the forefront for Europeans and for the many Italians outside Italy. So, yes, perfect. Quick intermission, next slide, please. Quick intermission, Jacopo goes to Australia. Before the pandemic, in summer 2019, I had the opportunity to present my book at the Italian Institute of Culture in Sydney and Melbourne, just after the IASP conference in Canberra. I started my speech asking the public to define how a typical Italian song is like, and made them name the most typical feature connected to musical Italianness. This is something I do in my classes as well. Then I played this song. We can just see the video. I think we can all imagine the sound in our head. So, if it starts. I think you should click twice. Okay, no, okay, so this is, okay. No problem. The song is Grande Amore by Il Volo at Eurovision 2015. Do you want me to sing Grande Amore by Il Volo? Please, yeah. Please no? Okay. People are saying no, okay. I won't sing the song, but I'm sure that you know Grande Amore by Il Volo. What struck me was the different reactions my students and the Australian public had while watching to this video. My students usually laugh and or raise their eyebrows, reacting to what in their perception is the quintessential representation of bad taste. This song is, without any doubt, excessively sentimental, cheesy, etc. On the contrary, the Australian public took the song very seriously. Some of them were nodding in appreciation. A couple were clearly moved by the song. Most of the attendees were Australians of Italian heritage who cannot speak Italian except for a couple of words their parents or grandparents taught them. Their idea of Italian popular music was exactly this one. They loved Il Volo because it reminded them of their childhood and their emotional connection to a country most of them had never visited. They loved Gigliola Cinquetti and asked me about her. Last week, I received an email from 3 Australian guys who will be here during Eurovision and begging me to reserve a place for the Gigliola concert tomorrow. So, Gigliola meeting tomorrow. So, point is, Il Volo is one of the most popular Italian bands outside Italy. Part of a national heritage, which is still cherished by millions of Italy abroad. They sold million copies, they sang with Placido Domingo, but still in Italy, for a certain kind of public, they are 3 creepy guys singing old-fashioned Italian pop. So this is an important thing to understand about the canzone italiana. It is both representative of a strong Italian identity and of bad taste, which is quite complicated. And of course, this suggests that Italian identity is also connected to a class issue, I mean, social class issue. This music, the canzone all'italiana, is indeed in Italy a lowbrow music, mocked by intellectual and eyebrows, loved by everyone else. And this, I guess, tells a lot about the complexity and ambiguity of the Italian identity and its self-representation in music, and not only in music. Some final remarks, and we can go to the last slide, which is like a celebration of our winners. I suggest that the very same attitude between eyebrow, lowbrow, self-representation and self-contempt is the attitude that Italy reserved for Eurovision. Until now, Eurovision has maintained a connection to the past of Italian canzone, so to the songs of the golden years of the Sanremo Festival, Gigliola Cinquetti, Il Volo and the likes, to the point that many people still call Eurofestival Eurovision, which is quite fine. And on the other hand, to a little-known present that has emerged in the mainstream only in its more camp and queer aspects, I can empirically affirm that before Måneskin, and to some extent still today, the only moment in recent decades that Eurovision entered Italian mainstream discourses was when Conchita Wurst won in 2014. So this is the idea most Italian people have of Eurovision. In a nutshell, through Eurovision, Europe has seen us, we Italians, as we would not like to be seen. Like Il Volo, like the melodic Sanremo song. Ideas on the typical Italian songs include expectation on style, so how an Italian song should sound, about content, what it's supposed to sing about. Such ideas are linked, of course, to the nationalist agenda. This is our tradition. We must preserve it, to the idealization of the homeland from a diasporic perspective, but also to class matters and to a peculiar self-contempt which consider the canzone italiana as the quintessential cheesy genre. The national feeling of Italians towards our song is schizophrenic, split between pride for the made in Italy and shame for something that we perceive as kitsch, as a stereotype version of ourselves, and Eurovision kind of reminding this to us in any moment. However, and I conclude, things are changing. In recent years, also as a consequence of the overturning of the global music market in the streaming era, the Italian music industry has started to market Italian music more and more to foreign countries. The symbolic moment of transition was undoubtedly represented by Mahmoud's victory in 2019 at the Sanremo Festival. I was there. I have several tasty anecdotes, but I will reserve those for the next time. On that occasion, Mahmoud, the son of an Italian and an Egyptian, won precisely over Il Volo, in a symbolic clash between the old Italy and the new one. His second place at Eurovision later that year demonstrated that a new type of Italian melody can sell abroad as well. So the recent case of Måneskin only proves the point. Italy maybe is ready for Eurovision, and let's hope that Torino will be ready as well. Thank you very much. So we have 5 minutes, perfect, for some Q&A. If someone wants to ask something or to discuss something, or to sing Il Volo's Grande Amore, I can pass the mic. We have to, because we are online.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanna. Thank you for your wonderful talk. And when you mentioned Il Volo, I'm wondering now about the significance of opera for the Italian popular music tradition, back to nationalism, but also today with the questions of taste.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the question. This is a really crucial point. Opera, along with Neapolitan songs in the 19th century, was the way Italian music, spread to the world. And it was also the beginning of popular music as we consider it, because both opera and the Neapolitan songs were spread through media, broadsheets, and later through, of course, recorded music. As you know, Caruso was the first million seller of the recording industry with Vesti la giubba by Leoncavallo Spagliacci. So yes, point is that in a moment of the opera timeline, opera became an official and quote art genre. While Il Volo and several others Italian musicians who sings operatic tunes abroad, Andrea Bocelli or maybe Il Divo, for instance, they perform a different version of opera and a different way of propose a different way of singing opera, which is a more melodramatic way of singing opera, I would say. So they do not have the typical tenor voices that we can hear in operatic theater now, but they are more like sentimental. And this way of showing feelings is something that is really complicated because it's part of people normally see Italian, sexy singing, blah, blah, blah. But it's something that we do not like. I mean, it's considered like a stereotype, at least from a certain Italian perspective. So yeah, opera is at the center of the way people understand Italian popular music because it's the base of Italian popular music. The Sanremo Festival was based on the songs of the fascist period, which was based on operatic tunes and the Neapolitan canzone, which are like the founding myth of Italian popular music. So yes, thank you very much. You may.
Well, you were talking about Mahmoud representing the new Italy. This year, he's on stage again with a song that, at least for me, musically doesn't represent the new Italy, because if it was not a male couple on stage, if it was a mixed couple, this would have worked in Sanremo 20 years ago. Don't you think so?
No, I don't think that I agree with you with this. I will explain why. I think that Brividi by Mahmoud and Blanco is instead a very smart song because it managed to mix the Sanremo flavor, strings and melody, with some kind of, let's say, James Blake attitude, Frank Ocean / James Blake attitude, which is within the Mahmoud style. So it was kind of a hybrid. Most songs that won the Sanremo Festival worked like this. So they managed to put something typical of the Sanremo vibe. So in this case, the orchestra, the strings, and something new, like in weddings, something borrowed, something new. So I think it worked quite well because it represents a new way of interpreting that kind of musical tradition. In Sanremo, we have a cover night where artists perform an historical song from the Italian repertoire, and they did Il cielo in una stanza by Gino Paoli, more famous in the Mina's version. And they did a great job because they took these 61 Italian songs and make it contemporary within the Sanremo contest. So I think in Italy it worked quite well for its way of connecting two different audiences. I'm not sure it will work as well in Eurovision because, of course, European people will not connect this kind of proposal to the Sanremo Festival. So I'm really curious about the European public reaction on this. But I love the song, I must say. So. Okay, so we can wrap it up. Okay, so thank you very much. It's 29:56, so that's perfect. Thank you very much. Enjoy your stay in Torino.
Thanks a lot, Jacopo. Thank you for the keynote and thank you for the questions. Now we will have a short break, a musical interlude with Ko Jun, a South Korean pianist who is collaborating with us in these last 3 editions. So for us, it's very important to have music because we are talking about music. Unfortunately, due to technical reasons, we can't hear music, but we can hear Jacopo singing, so was amazing. Thank you. And after this short break, we'll be again in more or less 10 minutes. After the short break, we will come again with the Science Slam and with these brilliant early career researchers. So stay with us online and, of course, here in the room. Thank you. See you in a few minutes. Hello again. Welcome again. We are very proud to be here again with the second part of the conference, the Science Slam. So we prepared this in two sessions, in two different parts. And the idea of the Science Slam is to create a place, create a stage maybe, for early career researchers and students to present their research and to discuss with established researchers, maybe some dinosaurs. I don't know if I can use these words. So we divided into two parts. This first one is with Elisa Mastrangelo. Please welcome Elisa. And with Selene Barbon.
Hello.
Discussing these are ideas and their works with Jacopo Tomatis. Thank you again for being with us. So,
Okay.
So just a few notes before. In the second part, we will have Adam Dubin moderating the session with Emma Fritz, Isis Wheelwright, and Matteo Paniza. So you can vote in your favorite presentation in this link or QR code that we are sharing, or tweetback.da/EGSF. So in our website, you also can find complete videos, presentations made by these amazing early career researchers, and the lines for voting will be open until the end of Science Slam. So you have a quiet time to vote in your favorite. But remember, here there are no losers or winners. Our goal is to encourage people to convey their research in an interesting, entertaining way. So it's our goal to convey science in a different mode. So thank you for being here. We hope you will enjoy the discussion. And on stage, Jacopo, Elisa, and Selene. Thank you.
Thanks again. It's very...
You have to.
Sorry, thanks again. Happy to be here again. Happy to be the dinosaur on the table, at the table. I must say that is kind of depressing how quick you pass from being a young, promising scholar to a usual, let's say dinosaur. I would say a different word in Italian, but we are on a public conference, so I won't say that. But yes, I'm happy to be the dinosaur of the situation. So we have here Elisa Mastrangelo from the Roma Tre University. She did a thesis on Eurovision in 2020. And Selene Barbone from the University of Torino, and she just discussed her thesis on Italian divas of the 1960s and 70s. And I think that for the first round, I will just ask both of them to introduce their work on Eurovision in a few words. Of course, I'm here to help with English, and if you feel free to use whatever language do you prefer, and mixing words and stuff. So we are in Eurovision, so we just speak in tongues. So Elisa maybe can go first. So why are you interested in Eurovision? How you managed to do a thesis on a dissertation on Eurovision, which is a kind of strange thing to do in Italy, I must say. Da quando ti interessi di Eurovision? Perché hai fatto una tesi su questi argomenti, che è una cosa abbastanza strana in Italia, come dicevamo prima.
Okay. Hi everybody, and I don't speak English very well. For this I need a mediatic support in this, and I speak Italian and Jacopo translate my words. Decisi di fare una tesi riguardo l'Eurovision Song Contest successivamente al 2018, quando guardando l'Eurovision capì bene il senso e il significato di questo contest. E nel 2020 scelsi appunto ESC come mio tema e in particolar modo il percorso svolto dall'Italia all'interno del contest. In vista di questa conferenza ho estratto una parte di quel percorso dell'Italia narrando delle date principali.
Yes, she decided to do her dissertation in 2018 after watching Eurovision Song Contest, and after that she understood the meaning of Eurovision. I will add that it is not obvious for Italian people, as I mentioned later, because we are not interested in Eurovision. So her dissertation was on the Italian role within the contest. It was like a short version of what you said.
Allora, le date più importanti che ho scelto di prendere e rielogare, diciamo, riepilogare dentro al video che è stato pubblicato online sono le 3 vittorie importanti per l'Eurovision, a partire dal 1964 con Gioia Cinquetti e la canzone Non ho l'età. Grazie alla sua vittoria a Copenaghen, l'Italia ospita l'Eurovision nel 1965 a Napoli. Successivamente, la seconda data importante per l'Italia è il 1990, data in cui l'Italia vince nuovamente l'Eurovision grazie alla canzone Insieme 1992 di Totò Cutugno, canzone dedicata all'avvento del mercato unito e dei legami europei. Successivamente abbiamo l'opportunità di riospitare l'Eurovision in Italia e lo ospitiamo a Roma presso gli studi di Cinecittà. Questa edizione, come molti sapranno, si rivelò un disastro per la sua disorganizzazione, poca formazione, poca conoscenza del contest. Dunque l'Italia sceglie successivamente di distaccarsi sempre di più dal contest, onde evitare di doverlo riospitare. Nel 1998 in particolare abbandoniamo totalmente il contest per poi ritornare nel 2011. In questo periodo di distanza dal contest iniziano a girare delle voci per giustificare questa assenza. In particolar modo l'Eurovision fa un'audience troppo bassa, l'Eurovision non è un prodotto italiano, noi abbiamo già Sanremo, l'Eurovision non ci pubblicizza, non promuove la nostra musica all'estero e via dicendo. Successivamente, grazie alla sollecitazione da parte di più persone e soprattutto degli italiani, nel 2011 rientriamo nel contest con Rafael Gualazzi e la canzone Madness of Love. Di lì vari artisti usciti dal Festival di Sanremo partecipano all'Eurovision fino al 2020, quando di fronte alla pandemia e a un nemico comune, il Covid, l'Eurovision si ritrova a non poter essere organizzato a Rotterdam. In particolar modo in quel periodo Cornal Mas, consulente creativo dell'Eurovision 2020, osservando gli italiani affacciati ai balconi che cantavano Fai rumore, prende ispirazione per creare uno show chiamato Shine a Light, uno show incentrato sulla musica, ma soprattutto sull'unione dell'Europa, poiché non competitivo, ma esclusivamente di partecipazione e condivisione. Uno show incentrato sulla musica, in cui gli artisti potevano cantare la loro canzone e concludevano cantando tutti insieme Shine a Light, canzone cantata dall'Inghilterra nel 1997, per simboleggiare l'unione dell'Europa, tutti insieme uniti, accendendo le proprie luci contro un nemico comune, che era a quel punto il virus. Nel 2021, concludo, grazie alla vittoria dei Måneskin con 524 punti a Rotterdam, l'Italia si ritrova a dover riorganizzare il contest, speriamo in modo migliore quest'anno, a Torino. E quindi benvenuti a Torino alla 66esima edizione dell'Eurovision Song Contest. Ci auguriamo che questo sia un un contest magico e bello, come dice anche il suo slogan, il suono della bellezza, e che possa portare i turisti a rivivere le bellezze dell'Italia, ma soprattutto gli italiani a riavvicinarsi al contest.
Okay, thanks. I will try to summarize everything. It's useful to narrate the history of Italy in Eurovision, 1965 Naples, the first edition after Giulio Cinquetti victory in the same year. 65. Then in 1990, Insieme by Toto Cutugno won the Euro Festival with a very European song celebrating European identity and the rise of the Italian common market in the 1991, I think. After that, of course, the worst edition ever, I mentioned that earlier, with the organization of Eurovision at the Cinecittà Studios in Rome. After that, Italy withdrew because we do not want to host the show anymore. And after that, which is, I think, really interesting in your video as well, some rumors started to spread about the Italy's presence in Eurovision. So, like Italian people saying, no, this is not an Italian format, Eurovision does not help promoting our music abroad, etc. So 2011, Italy is back in the show with Rafael Gualazzi, 2020 Måneskin, 2022, sorry, Måneskin. I think a very interesting path to follow in the relationship between Italy and Eurovision is the one that you mentioned in your video. So the idea that the Eurovision 2020 creative consultant, I missed the name. What's the name? Qual è il nome del consulente creativo? Cornel Mas. Took the idea of the Shine a Light show after seeing Italian people singing Diodato's song Fai Rumore from their balconies. As you know, in Italy, we have a lot of balconies, and during the COVID pandemic and during the lockdown, most people used these balconies as a place for connecting with the community. I mean, in my neighborhood, people started singing at the balconies in late June, which was a problem because I was doing my classes online and people were singing like all day from the balconies. It was a very complicated matter, but it was great, I mean, because it was a way of connecting with people in a moment when we could not go outside. And one of the songs that were sung during this period was Diodato's Fai Rumore, which won the Sanremo Festival, and it was supposed to enter the Eurovision Song Contest in 2020. So the Shine a Light show started from this, with artists all around Europe singing their tunes and then singing the Shine a Light song all together. Diodato performed in the Arena di Verona. It was a very powerful moment with the Arena di Verona completely empty, without people. And so this was the short version of what you said with some extra infos, and you just said welcome to everybody. So thank you very much. I have a couple of questions. I think I can start from here, and then we move to Selene. In your video, you showed a very interesting chart of how the Italian public started to be interested again in Eurovision. We can see that the audience data started to increase from 2011 until now, with some bumps in the road. Can you tell us something more about this? Have you observed the way people in Italy have reacted to Eurovision after 2011? Ti chiedo del video, della slide nel video dell'incremento dell'audience, perché si vede molto bene che cresce. A un certo punto c'è anche un momento in cui invece va di nuovo giù. Se puoi dire qualcosa su questo, che mi sembra interessante.
Sì. E con il rientro dell'Italia nel 2011, con Madness of Love, nonostante venne trasmessa in differita, c'è una grande adesione da parte degli italiani, poiché con la trasmissione della finale raggiungiamo un livello alto, quasi tra i 2 e i 3 milioni di visualizzatori. E da lì in poi diciamo che inizia sempre di più a crescere ed incrementare fino a superare i quasi 4 milioni, che in realtà restano pochi come audience, però siamo fiduciosi che piano piano potranno sempre di più crescere, soprattutto quest'anno ospitando il contest, quindi dovendo garantire la massima visibilità e soprattutto sui canali principali, quindi ci auguriamo che questo incremento continui e che aumenti sempre di più, perché dalla vittoria c'è un grande interesse da parte degli italiani verso il contest e quindi un avvicinamento.
So yes, after 2011, the figures of people watching Eurovision went up to 4 millions, 4 millions, which I agree with you, it's not that much for the Italian television. It's not comparable at all to the Sanremo Festival audience. But Rai suggests, and I mean, everything suggests that this year it will be kind of a breaking moment. So probably many people will see Eurovision and will have a big audience. I mean, we hope to have a big audience. So yes, maybe we are ready for Eurovision now. So we'll see. We are very worried about that. Thank you. Of course.
Volevo concludere dicendo che il contest, prima di essere comunque uno spazio importante per la condivisione dell'arte, in questo caso la musica, è un contest incentrato su uno scambio di valori, di tradizioni, di culture, di differenze, ma specialmente di unicità. E prima di essere delle nazioni che competono, prima di essere delle bandiere, siamo delle persone che condividono una passione, che camminano sullo stesso suolo, che respirano la stessa aria e vivono sotto lo stesso cielo. E sarebbe importante se pensassimo prima all'unione, perché siamo un solo popolo che domina il mondo. Grazie.
It was kind of complicated, sorry. So yes, it's just she remember, and of course I agree that the point is the contest is an important place for sharing art, a place for exchanging, because before being flags and nation, we are people sharing a passion, breathing the same air and living under the same sky, and we must think of Eurovision as a way of being united. So this is more or less what you say. Thank you very much. I will move now to Selene Barbone. Thank you. But then we'll discuss again. Selene Barbode did her dissertation, as I mentioned, at this university. I must say that I must declare that she has been working with me, so I know her research because I read most of them. She worked on Mina, Milva, and Ornella Vanoni, who probably are the most important Italian divas from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and still today. But she managed to put together a presentation of the role of Italian song in Europe through Eurovision. So I can ask, welcome Selene, of course, and I can ask her to explain the connection between Eurovision and her research and why she is interested in a Eurovision in song contest. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My work stresses the international soul that links Sanremo Festival, Eurovision Song Contest, and Milva, who was, I guess, the most international among our singers, at least from the past. And especially her 80s mainstream discography. In her 80s mainstream discography, we can clearly listen to something that really wants to go out, come over borders and limits, and especially in her smash hit from 1982, I'm sorry, Alexanderplatz, which is a song about the reality of the two Germanys, and especially Eastern Berlin. The song is about the square, Alexanderplatz. And what really interests me is the international soul that Milva usually took on stage and in her songs that really went all over the world and still go over all over the world, even if she passed last year. And I guess what we can see in her career is an example of what Eurovision Song Contest means, which is friendships between countries and crossing borders and not knowing what limits are. And yes,
Thank you. Yes, I think that the songs that you decided to analyze in your video presentation, Alexanderplatz, first of all, is one of the best songs ever written by Franco Battiato, I must say. So we must remember that there's a stronger connection between our singer-songwriter, the most, let's say, recognized and culturally recognized singer-songwriter, and the Italian pop, especially abroad, because most songs from these great singers were also written by well-known singer-songwriter. The question is this: during the conference in the last days, like common topic was this idea of a European song that emerged from Eurovision. I mean, we usually think of music scene in terms of nations, so the Italian music scene, the French music scene, but there is like a cosmopolitan taste in songs. And I think Italy contributed to this kind of a cosmopolitan song style through Eurovision and through the Sanremo Festival as well. Alexanderplatz is a great example, but I can think of several other songs sung by Milva and maybe by Mina too. I'm not sure about Ornella Vanoni. So maybe you can comment on how these three great Italian divas were perceived abroad and contributed to build, I think, this idea of cosmopolitan song. I mean, I'm quite sure that Milva did it. She recorded in German and, as you mentioned, in French, Spanish. Mina also did. So what are the connections between these two words?
Posso parlare in italiano? Ci metto di me. Okay. Credo che il collegamento più evidente appunto sia quello tra l'Europa e Milva e Mina. Ornella Vanoni forse un po' di meno, perché comunque ha impiegato anche più tempo ad affermarsi come cantante popolare in Italia, mentre Mina e Milva hanno subito avuto un grande successo, ma in generale sono state subito molto riconoscibili dal pubblico. Questo proprio Mina, secondo me, proprio perché ha debuttato come qualcosa di completamente diverso da quello che era da quella che era la tradizione musicale italiana di quel momento, quantomeno nella popular music. Mina inizia con il rock and roll, quindi qualcosa che viene proprio dall'altra parte del mondo, soprattutto visto che era il 58. Milva comincia nel genere della tradizione melodica italiana, ma grazie all'incontro, insomma, con la canzone politica prima e soprattutto grazie al lavoro con Giorgio Strehler e al Piccolo Teatro di Milano, quindi impegnandosi nel lavoro sul repertorio di Bertolt Brecht, riescono entrambe a capire, almeno a mio avviso, quali siano davvero le prospettive della nuova musica, perché è in quel momento che il mondo comincia a avvicinarsi sempre di più. Non si parla più di musiche dei singoli stati, si comincia a parlare di una popular music occidentale, o comunque con ogni popular music chiaramente poi ha una propria tradizione, ha dei legami con il passato, ma sono dei legami che si rafforzano grazie anche a delle nuove influenze, a dei nuovi contributi. E credo che appunto, soprattutto nelle discografie di Mina e di Milva, questo sia particolarmente evidente, perché hanno proprio una vena particolarmente internazionale, è proprio la loro attitudine ad essere appunto così esposte nei confronti dell'altro.
Okay, sorry. I'm a dinosaur, so my mind is like, I need to write down stuff because otherwise I won't remember a word. Sorry. I'm old, as I mentioned. So yes, again, this connection between European songs and Italian diva is particularly evident for Mina and Milva. Ornella Vanoni needed more time to be recognized as a star in Italy as well, so she did not manage to become very popular abroad. Mina debuted in 1958, and at that moment she was very different because she kind of imported foreign music in Italy. She was a great vehicle for rock and roll, for instance. In Italy, we have this tradition of female singers singing rock and roll at that moment. Milva was at the moment more traditional, but then she switched to a political theater, performing Bertolt Brecht songs in Italian and in German, in the context of the Piccolo Teatro of Milan with Giorgio Strehler. So at that moment, she kind of turned her career in a different direction, and she understood the need for different music in different countries. So she also took on, I think that she also took on a way of performing. Maybe you can comment on this. I think that Milva kind of suggests a very European way of performing. I mean, I do not perceive her as a typical Italian singer because we kind of hear in her way of singing like a European flavor, maybe because of this Brecht situation. I don't know if you agree with this or not.
Yes, I do. Maybe it's also because from 1965 she started working in theater, and she had to let her traditional use of voice go because everything was changing and times were changing, and most of all, she had to change in order to compete with other singers in the industry, to not be overcome by others.
Yes.
And then she was such an intelligent performer that she clearly understood what had to be done.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have 3 minutes left. So quick question for both of you. You are young scholars, but you are also music enthusiasts, I think. So who's gonna win and why? Chi vincerà e perché vincerà? From a musicological point of view, of course. You go first, Selene.
I wish Portugal would win. But not just because of the conference, but
we have a word in Italian for this, which is paraculo, but okay.
I think it's a very good song with a very, very good production, most of all, and the performance is great. So, and I like ballads, so that's why.
A me piacerebbe vincesse Malta per la canzone, diciamo, dedicata all'accettazione di se stessi. I am what I am.
She's for Malta because the song is about accepting yourself. I am what I am. So this could work in Eurovision, I agree with you. We'll see. So it's now 11:18, so we are like 2 minutes in advance on time, but we can start our Q&A now. I'm here for translating if you need to do that. I can speak a poor English, a poor Italian, and some French.
Is it on? Yes. So I have an uninformed question, but when I first studied in Germany in the 80s, there was a lot of Italian rock and also women singers that was very popular. So I was just wondering about this tradition of women Italian rock singers and how that got exported. And even if there's some kind of connection between that and Maneskin's performance, you know, obviously not a woman, but has that feel also.
Sorry, I didn't get the connection between the singers and...
And Maneskin.
Ah, okay, thank you, sorry.
Well,
I'm also a little deaf because I know that.
I guess the link is, I don't know, if we think about the history of Italian music, we can see that the most important things, I mean, in the last more than, I don't know, 60 years, are from people who come over the tradition, okay? So rock music back in the days was something new, completely new, and it was youth. It was youth music for young people who didn't existed before that. So in some kind of ways, Maneskin, I think, are doing just the same thing, because we were used to listen to melodic pop music in Sanremo, and then they came and they did what they had to do. So they did rock music. I don't know, I can imagine that maybe rock music is, I don't know, something so important to Italian music, but in a not, come posso dire, tipo un salvagente per la musica italiana?
Like security, I would say that. I would say salvagente.
Yes,
It's kind of.
It's kind of a security blanket for Italian music. When Italian music feels like everything is about melodic pop, then some kind of rock musicians come and change everything. So maybe that's why.
This was a life jacket. So
So I wonder, because we had all these Italian women singing, and Mina was very popular in Germany, and Milva as well. They never won Sanremo. Won Sanremo.
No, they didn't.
Do you think they were too European?
Maybe. I don't know, because maybe they were just, I don't know, too much for Sanremo, back in the days at least. I mean, when Mina sang Le Mille Bolle Blu, it was something so out of the tradition. Even when she performed it, I mean, the gesture on the hand, with her hand on the lips, and people were shocked, and they were so shocked that press thought she was mocking audience, and maybe that's why she never won. But she only competed 2 times, in 1960 and 1961. Milva competed 15 times, and she never won, unfortunately. But I think at the beginning she had chances to win, but she was very, very young. I mean, she was 22, 23. And maybe she wasn't ready for winning Sanremo. Then when she was ready to win Sanremo, because she had enough experience to do that, times were changing. So maybe she was just not at the right time at Sanremo Festival. And then she became Milva. I mean, she became one of the most important female singers of Italian music. So she was too much for Sanremo. And that's why she never won. She deserved it.
I have a question for Elisa. I will put in English and then Jacopo will translate. When I'm studying Portuguese national selection, Festival da Canção, I saw when Portugal won in 2017, the interest on Eurovision in Portugal raised. So many people doesn't care about Eurovision or just complaining about Eurovision music, of course. Many people just do zapping, watch to complain and complain about Portuguese entries, of course. But the interest we saw in the dynamics by fans and other dynamics, also in the audiences, raised. So a question for you is, are you observing this growing of interest? Do you think it could happen here for Italy? I don't know what you are observing. So yeah, it's a kind of open question. Thank you.
Beh, sicuramente la vittoria dell'Eurovision ha posto l'attenzione molto evidente, diciamo, sul contest, mentre prima era ancora poco conosciuto. Con la vittoria dei Maneskin se ne è sentito tanto parlare sui giornali, ai telegiornali, e quindi ha dovuto per forza essere notato dagli italiani, che si sono andati a interessare, e chi non lo conosceva, diciamo, per un motivo o l'altro, che sia collaborativo, lavorativo, visto che sta impiegando anche tanti lavoratori all'interno del contest, oltre che volontari. E in particolar modo anche l'organizzazione del contest ha posto un grande faro sopra il contest, e con questa edizione diciamo sarà la ciliegina sulla torta per fare in modo che l'interesse cresca e soprattutto la conoscenza verso il contest cresca, perché una volta che uno lo conosce diventa quasi difficile evitarlo. È un contest molto interessante. E da quanto so, la crescita i biglietti sono stati venduti più di 25.000 biglietti, quindi c'è una grande adesione e si spera che questa adesione sia anche e soprattutto da parte degli italiani.
Okay, so yes, of course, the Maneskin victory put the contest to the forefront, especially because Italian media covered extensively Maneskin winning. So we basically cannot ignore Eurovision Song Contest anymore. And she suggests that the Italian organization of Eurovision also forced us to a major attention to Eurovision workers. The organization make us aware of people working around Eurovision and around the music industry. At the moment, the fact that all tickets were sold like within the hour, more than 25,000 tickets sold, suggests that yes, so definitely the Maneskin case is like the turning point of this history. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. A question links to what Sofia just said. I'm George from Malta, and you just mentioned the Maltese entry as a potential winner for your tastes. Links to what Sofia said before. A country like Malta has never won the Eurovision Song Contest, and there is big interest, and like 90% of the population watches the contest. Through the study, any suggestion for a small country like Malta, if we would win one day, how can we keep the interest active? Because then, like when the Junior Eurovision was there, we won it twice, and then like the interest was not there anymore. So any suggestion, if we would win one day, what can we do to keep the interest since we get it?
Traduco, viene da Malta naturalmente, quindi ti ringrazio per l'endorsement. Malta non ha mai vinto Eurovision e la partecipazione sta attivando un grande interesse nella popolazione. Come si manterrà l'interesse attivo nei prossimi anni? Cioè, come si riesce a convincere la gente a restare dentro l'interesse per Eurovision? It's a complicated question.
Io credo che la musica sia un media importante, molto potente e la vittoria non va a influire sull'interesse delle persone. Alla fine l'interesse viene da ciò che viene messo in atto, è una sfilata, diciamo, l'Eurovision, una sfilata di musica. Credo che anche solo questo riesca a catturare l'interesse. Ci auguriamo che Malta presto magari possa anche lei ospitare l'Eurovision per far vedere un po' anche la sua terra. E nulla, questo.
So you don't have any suggestion? Music is powerful and Eurovision is like a music parade. So the point is to be there, I think, rather than winning to get the interest on. Okay, I think that it's 11:30, so we are perfect on time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elisa Mastrangelo and Selene Barbone. And now to Sofia.
Thank you. Okay, it's working. Thank you, Jacopo. Thank you, Elisa. Thank you, Selene. So now we will pass to the second session of Science Slam. So I will ask Adam Dubin, our chair of this session, Matteo and Emma to come here and to present their works. Thank you again. And I have to remember that you have time for voting. So the lines are open. It's our Eurovision queue. So you have the QR code to vote, you have the link, and please welcome here. And also Isis will be online with us from Canada, so very far away. And thank you for being with us. I will pass the word to Adam and enjoy.
There we go. All right, good morning, everyone. A pleasure to be here today. First of all, big thanks to Sophia and Irving for this excellent conference and all the logistics that go into making something like this such a success. So thanks to both of you. I'm joined today by three budding scholars, Emma Fritz, Isis Wheelwright, no? And Matteo Panizza, no, if I pronounced that correctly. And all three provided really interesting abstracts that link to sort of three perhaps overarching themes. One is politics and perhaps regulatory structures within sort of the broader Eurovision contest. Another one is geopolitics. And then the other is sort of quasi-governance and evolution of ideology and politics and how all of that sort of intersects in different ways through the Eurovision Song Contest. So what I want to do is hand it over first to Emma to talk about her abstract, then just based on the order I have here, Isis, and then Matteo. All right? So Emma, why don't you begin?
Hello, everyone. My name is Emma, and I am an anthropology student from Sweden. I study at Uppsala University. And thank you so much for having me. It feels unreal being here with other Eurovision enthusiasts. I'm not really used to that. Everyone hates me when I'm just talking about Eurovision all the time. I'm sure you all know that. So it's really an honor. So when I started brainstorming ideas for my bachelor's thesis, it didn't take long until I decided that I wanted to do something on Eurovision. And in Sweden, the national selections, Melodifestivalen, is really a big thing. It's kind of mandatory to watch it every year. But when it comes to Eurovision, is usually just tossed away as just a kitschy song contest of musical mediocrity. So when I wanted to do this, I wanted to focus on something that people would actually be interested in. And if you put it together with politics, people will listen. So that's essentially what I did. So for my bachelor's thesis, I have focused on how the governing body of Eurovision and the Eurovision organizers have the power to kind of control and regulate the political discourse by managing the selection of competing songs. So they kind of have the power to regulate the flow and counterflow of discourses allowed to enter the Eurovision universe. So essentially what I did was I took examples from Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus over the last decades and showed like how they've done in the contest and also how they are perceived. And you can kind of see in the conclusion I made was that the way that these entries, like how they perform and how the results is going to be, is partly dependent on our joint history and biases and political trends, and also the rules and values that are kind of promoted on the Eurovision stage kind of control how we perceive these countries. And the second part of my thesis, which is probably the most anthropologically relevant, is how I look at the Eurovision community as this imagined community. So it was the theorist Benedict Anderson who came up with the idea of an imagined community, and he focused primarily on nations. And obviously Eurovision is not a nation, but Benedict also said that nations are not constructed by blood, but by language. So the thing I researched was how through language and through symbols and activities and expressions, people get this collective understanding, and that's how we come together. So here, Eurovision is kind of a social illusion carried out by the organizers to kind of get people to come together through this collective understanding of what a pan-European identity should be and how like European unification works. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
For that. So I wonder, you talk about this idea of seeing it as a sort of, to an extent, of nation building, or bringing together nations. And I wonder to what extent, you see Eurovision as sort of a soft power influence within, for example, the broader human rights regime. Now, in my research, I look at to what extent Eurovision can potentially influence human rights advancement. I wonder, based on what you've seen, for example, the contribution, rejecting, for instance, Belarus's contributions, right, last year, for instance, to what extent do you see it as sort of a soft power complement to the broader human rights regimes or mechanisms that exist in more sort of formal structures?
Well, one example of this that I touched upon a little bit in my bachelor's thesis is that when Ukraine won in 2016, a lot of people thought that, like, how could they allow that sort of song because it's clearly political. And then you can say that it's the right kind of politics, and the narrative in that case was the one pronounced by Ukraine, but also the Eurovision establishment. So the kind of Russian narrative in this example was silent because it was a very obvious point that they were trying to make here. So clearly with the power asymmetry looking at Russia and Ukraine in real life, this could presumably not have been done using traditional hard power politics. So I think that's an example how these soft power politics kind of go into the competition.
Excellent. Let's move on then to Isis Wheelwright, who's joining us online. Hello, Isis. Or
Hi.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me? Just to check.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm very sad not to be in Turin right now. I'm calling in from Canada, and it's 5:30 in the morning, so just to apologize if I might be a little bit tired. I want to thank Irving, Carla, and all the other presenters. I'm really happy to be back here again. I presented a paper at last year's conference about Eurovision's 2019 and the politics of Eurovision being hosted in Israel. And I'm presenting a piece today that was commissioned for Mace magazine, which is a politics magazine in the UK. So it's called Why the Eurovision Stage Matters for Ukraine. I'm sure this will be a hugely discussed topic at the conference, and also it's going to kind of characterize the Eurovision this year. But when I was commissioned to write it, it was during the time when Alina Pash had just been pulled from Ukraine's Eurovision, so the article changed and morphed as the invasion of Ukraine has happened. And I just wanted to start by sending my solidarity in regards to the Ukrainian community and to all that have suffered from this horrific war. My research was formed around 3 interviews with academics involved with Eurovision, so I wanted to thank them for their participation. Dr. Paul Jordan, Dr. Catherine Baker, and Dr. Jess Carniel. There were 2 kind of main things I wanted to convey in the article. Firstly, it was to contextualize Ukrainian history within Eurovision for an audience who was maybe tuning into the context of during the 22 invasion and Kalush Orchestra's popularity, and to also show that the Eurovision stage has mirrored the history of Ukraine on many fronts, from their independence as a sovereign nation from the USSR to the Orange Revolution, through to the invasion of Crimea and now the Russian invasion. Since its participation in 2003, Eurovision has been a really important site where a unique Ukrainian identity has been represented to a European-wide audience. I can't read out the whole article, but I just wanted to give you a little excerpt from the kind of last section. When I'm talking about this year. So this year's context reflects a devastating new chapter of Ukrainian history. They are fronted by Kalush Orchestra, a rap group formed in 2019 with their song Stefania, a song written by Ola, the lead singer's mother. It combines modern hip-hop with traditional Ukrainian folklore sounds. Initially coming second place on Vidbur, Ukraine's selection show behind Alina Pash, Pash was later withdrawn from competing due to an alleged unauthorized trip to Crimea in 2015. Kalush Orchestra have not been spared from service, but have been given special consideration to lead the Ukraine to perform at Eurovision this year. Oleg told Reuters, "I cannot enjoy it while I'm worried for my loved ones. The war has separated me and my girlfriend." He himself is running a 35-person strong volunteer group supplying medical supplies and helping individuals flee as refugees. He said of his song to Sky News, "It's an anthem for Ukraine and everybody is singing it. Originally the song was dedicated to my mother, but now it's a song for all mothers." This moment is worthy of intrigue, not only because culture is one battleground where Russian aggression is being resisted, but because the Eurovision stage offers a unique look into the contested realities of Europeanness, however contradictory these borders may be. Dr. Carniel suggests that the idea that it was silly or frivolous to think about Eurovision at a time like this is wrong. It isn't. It's precisely the time where the meaning and significance of something like Eurovision can come into clear view. Ukrainian defiance has proven to be interwoven with the Eurovision Song Contest, and this year will continue that cultural thread. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Why don't we go to Matteo, and then we can open it up to questions. Okay.
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
I'm Matteo. I studied here in Turin, where I graduated with Jacopo Tomatis. The name of my work was When Music Divides and Unites, the Eurovision Song Contest between Nationalism and Politics, because I focused my studies on this aspect, the fact that the Eurovision is full of politics and some, for example, the boycotts in the Italian situation, in the Italian point of view. So my work was divided in three parts. The first part was a presentation of the contest, so the mechanism, the voting system, and the nations that are joining the Eurovision. The second part was a focus on the nationalism. So the fact that every country represent themselves in the Eurovision with their traditions, costumes, and cultures. And for example, the fact that the postcards are always used not only to show the country that hosts the contest that year, that specific year, but also, for example, in 2014 edition in Copenhagen, where the postcards were filmed in every country, in every nation, with as a common final, which was creating the national flag. And Italy, of course, used food to create their flag with Emma Marrone, one of the worst position we make in the Eurovision in the last 10 years. So there are a lot of elements, cultural elements, that show the nationalism and patriotism of every country in Eurovision. And the last part of my work was focused on the Italian situation. So the fact that Italy has always tried to show their best, for example, the fashion, if we think about Il Volo, which was really with their ties and everything, but also the Italian culture, for example, always Il Volo, that had in the background classical statues or Roman places and so on. So Italy always tried to show itself with everything, the food, the culture, the traditions, but not only Italy, but everybody. If we think about, for example, Poland or Ukraine or Armenia, that every year send, for example, traditional songs with typical instruments, or also the fact that every host nation try to represent themselves in the contest, not only with the song, but also with all the preparation of the contest. So the stage, for example, or the logo. If we think about the Russian edition in 2009, there was a phoenix, which is a typical element of the Russian fairy tales. Or in Ukraine 2017 with the typical necklace, the namisto. So every country tries to represent themselves in the contest with every element possible. So this was the focus of my work, the fact that there is a political statement, which is also represented by, for example, the media, how the media represent the contest. We talk later about how the Italian media talk about the Maneskin victory. But for example, in Italy, as we said later, the Conchita Wurst case was really important. The fact that many politicians talked about Conchita because she was a drag queen. So it was an important element also in the Italian culture, because we are really close on this. and we need to open up, as in Rotterdam said. So the main thing is the fact that there is politics in this contest, even if the contest was created to unite people through music and values all these countries, and not how they represent themselves, who represent this country, even if they are drag or gays or whatever. So it's an important message, because the politics must not be in the Eurovision, but must be a celebration of every culture, every country, and all the people. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, that you talked about how Eurovision. Thanks, I always forget. Sort of projects a sort of nationalistic image, but it's very much linked to, for example, LGBT, right, culture, and so on. Whereas the more traditional sort of movements of nationalism in Europe, and particularly over these last few years, here in Italy, but also in Spain with Vox, Le Pen, although sort of stopped a bit in the recent election. I mean, can we sort of see Eurovision as kind of a counter movement or a counter nationalism to more traditional notions of the growth of nationalism here in Europe?
Yeah, I think that the Eurovision is the perfect platform to represent also the rights that she was talking later. And I think it's a great movement to make everybody understand that it's not important how we are or how we look, but it's important what we transmit, what is the message. So the fact that the Eurovision Song Contest is a contest on music, on songs, it's perfect, because every songs always have a message, even if the message can be a message about rights or a situation like the Ukrainian song of Jamala. So I think that the Eurovision is perfect for this, even if there is still somebody that see the Eurovision as like a gay platform or something about LGBTQ community. And in Italy, for example, there is still this image. So who loves the Eurovision must be a part of the LGBTQ community, even if it's not this. So in Italy, there are a lot of fans because they love the message of the Eurovision Song Contest. They love the unity, the great community that it creates. So I think that it can be a great platform to reach the message also in Italy, for example.
Hi, thank you for your great presentations here and in Canada, Isis. I'm interested in reference to soft politics, soft power and politics, and I'm also mentioned of values. And I wonder, Isis, if you could expand on your point about this being, about Eurovision being a perfectly appropriate place for Ukraine to self-present. And does that have to do with a question about shared values in addition to or more than politics? I'm just hoping you can expand on that point about why it's appropriate for Ukraine to be self-representing this year.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Karen. I think it's interesting that that idea of representation. When I was interviewing Paul Jordan for the article, he was also kind of reminding me about the representation of who's being represented here and how the Ukrainian government have always been very involved in who represents Ukraine in Eurovision, and that's always a kind of select version of the population. And so that's not always representing kind of every different aspect, but it's actually quite a maybe curated representation for a Western audience. So that kind of definitely transformed what I think. But I think, I mean, about shared values, I think it's a really important thing that they're going to be here this year. And I think that representation in terms of, so like I was kind of inspired to do the article in the sense that I was thinking during during the invasion that my biggest ideas about Ukrainian culture have been through the Eurovision Song Contest, and it's probably quite a unique sounding board where a lot of people who are now engaging with Ukraine now because of the invasion might have had that relationship to Ukrainian culture through Eurovision as the first kind of sounding board. Yeah. So I think that's also like why it's very important in that sense of kind of the creation of an identity of Ukraine that's unique and that's sovereign and that's self-governing.
So, yeah, hello, I'm Felix Hering from Leipzig University. First of all, thank you for the invitation here. So I have a question for Emma here. You have been talking about the EBU, but the EBU, of course, is also a network of a lot of broadcasters, and sometimes I get the feeling that the EBU sometimes acts as a sleeping giant. For example, this year with Russia, it wasn't the EBU that pushed for the exclusion of Russia, it were Scandinavian broadcasters, the Baltic ones, I think maybe Poland. So what do you think is the role of the national broadcasters when it comes to these decisions within the EBU? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think they play quite a significant role, but I also think that EBU has the last word in anything. But obviously, it's like with everything, they are influenced what's happening within the national broadcasters as well. And we all know that if people withdraw from the contest, there will be no Eurovision. So obviously it's a relationship that you kind of have to nourish. And I think that with when they banned Russia from the contest, I think that was I mean, I think it was going to happen sooner or later, but EBU are always very determined to be like, well, we're in non-political, this is a non-political event and all of that. But I definitely think that if they looked at the advantages and disadvantages and including Russia, the disadvantages were bigger. So I think that was kind of also why they made the decision, because I think if they were to continue to be like, yeah, they are allowed in the contest, people would react, and there might have been bigger issues than just people saying that this is obviously political. So I think did that answer your question? Yeah, kind of.
One lever, I mean, that is available, to the EBU that they've exercised, I think not enough, is entering the cases against the countries through the European Court of Human Rights as third-party interveners. And they've done it on 2 or 3 occasions. One, the Conchita Wurst case, once against Greece. But that's an area where the EBU can sort of leverage a certain more than soft power, in pushing for a settlement against the state when it does, for instance, threaten free and fair media, or it goes against the values. Obviously, it needs someone with victim status in order to bring a case to begin with, right? Which is in itself sometimes a challenge. But there are a number of instances where certainly someone could have brought a case through the EBU once they had exhausted their domestic remedies, and to the European Court of Human Rights, and the EBU could have entered as a third party or sort of amicus curiae and didn't do it. So that's an area where I think they can sort of leverage more direct influence.
That was the better answer. Thank you.
No. Just to add on to yours. Just to add on.
Do we have any other questions in the room?
If that's okay. So you talk about national representations, and do you think that the countries or like the entries benefit from like including and playing off of like national stereotypes or singing in their native language? Because I think it's interesting because with Sweden, obviously we don't really play off of any national, yeah. We're just delusional and think that we're always going to win. That's our national thing. So yeah, I think it's, I would like to hear your point of view.
Yeah, I think because Sweden always wants to win, so they don't want to represent themselves. But for example, in my work, I talk about the 2013 edition, the fact that there was a stage that in a way it represents the Swedish culture, the fact that there is ice and it's a Nordic land, so there are some aspects, but in the performances they always study a performance that is perfect for the Eurovision in order to win the Eurovision. So there are other countries, I think, that they want to express their culture to Europe, to let them know their traditions, their customs. For example, I talk about which not always, but many times they represented themselves with traditional costumes and the traditional instruments. But I think that it's a good thing to do, because the Eurovision is also this, no? The fact that it's a community, it's a group of countries that have different type of tradition, cultures, languages, and so on. And I think it's right to represent themselves with these aspects. But also, I think that also because I don't think that even if the contest is a European contest, so it must be the representation of Europe, not only the single country. I think that it's not always good, for example, to sing in English, because the fact that they sing in English, it's only to let the message understood to people, no? So I think that the fact that many countries decided to sing in their native language, in their mother language, I think it's really good. Not only for the sound that every language has, because I think that it's fantastic to hear every language. For example, Portugal, it's one of the country that in my work, for example, I analyze it 10 years, no, from 2010 to 2020. Portugal is the third country that has a lot of songs in their mother language. The first was Italy and France, and then there was Portugal. So I think it's wonderful to hear the mother language, and I agree with the fact that the message sometimes it's not received by the public if you sing in the mother language, but I think that it's perfect. It's a perfect platform, a perfect stage to show your culture, your traditions. And I think it's really good, the fact that they use traditions and cultures. I don't know if I answer.
I mean, this may be going out a bit on a limb, but could we sort of think of Eurovision, I mean, based on what you've talked about, Matteo, as kind of Europe's night of sort of cancel culture in a way, no? In the sense that it's kind of Europe's night to sort of beat back against these more sort of populist movements, where it kind of shuts it out, at least for that evening, where it projects a much greater visibility of more perhaps progressive mainstream images of, for example, LGBT, or Karen, you've talked about in your articles, in 2012, the Swedish Moroccan performer who dances with a black man on stage, for instance, right? I mean, images that, the more nationalistic movements within Europe try to kind of beat back against in sort of a different type of nationalism. So can we sort of think of it as kind of the night of cancel culture? Because cancel culture really hasn't caught on within Europe, right? It's more of an American phenomenon. But is there a certain sort of cancel culture element to Eurovision, do you think?
I think that the fact that the country decided, for example, to sing in English or to not represent their culture, it's only how can I say, an economic question. So the fact that it's a market, the music industry. So the countries, I think, the countries that decide to sing in English, it's mainly because they want to reach a big audience, a big part of this market. While the countries that decide to sing in their mother language or to show their culture, I think that they are trying to conserve, to protect their culture, and show to all Europe, and not only Europe, these aspects. So maybe they don't want to, or they are not obsessed to the market, to the music industry. And for example, this is the fact that Italy refused to participate for many years, because they only watched the market, the money. So now there is, I think, a different point of view in Italy that has bring Italy to participate every year, and I think every year try to do their best to win, like Sweden, for example.
Couple more questions from the audience.
Hello, I really enjoyed the talks that you gave, and I have a question for Matteo or anyone else on the panel who want to comment on soft power. I wanted to ask whether, in your research, Matteo, whether you made a distinction between the soft power that host countries wanted to convey and whether that risk paid off. Because I think in particular, I think about when Russia hosted Azerbaijan and Israel, and whether events that happen outside TV cameras made it something that was a very risky bet for the countries to control. And if not, whether that is something that you'd be interested in researching, and again, open to the panel to answer that as well.
Yeah, I try to answer to the question. I think that every edition, not all the editions are made or created to show the soft power of the country, of the hosting country, because there are also some editions that tries to not follow this how can I say, this nationalistic point of view, this patriotism. For example, the Italian edition this year, there are some type of elements that show the nationalism of Italy. For example, the stage, which is an Italian garden, so there is this cultural aspect. But for example, the logo and many other things are not created to show the nationalism. So I think that there are some type of editions that show the soft power of the country, of also the events that are realized around the Eurovision. And for example, Italy this year, I think it's doing a good job for the events around the Eurovision. All the city of Turin is involved, every space of the Eurovision of the city. For example, the fact that in Italy this year, it's, I think, the first time that there is not one Euro club, but there are 10 Euro clubs. So they try to create something that involves all the city, all the realities, all the places. And I think it's a good form to show the city, the host city, not using the contest. I think the contest itself. So la gara, cioè the contest. I mean the challenge between all the singers. So la gara in Italian. Yeah, the competition. Thank you. And so I don't know if I answered the question or not. Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone else
And also
would like
my
to
English
comment.
is a little bit rusty, so it's difficult for me to understand, and so I try my best. Sorry.
I just wanted to add to that because I have been researching that as well, like how different countries are trying to control how they are perceived in a public setting. And obviously that also goes to when they're hosting the contest. So if we look at Russia in 2009, for example, we saw that they were like showcasing a lot of cultural things as a way to promote the country, but they were also kind of playing off of stereotypes, like showing polar bears walking on the streets. So I think that's also a way of trying to control things that they like, okay, so maybe let's say Western Europe thinks that we're barbaric or something like that. So then we show polar bears as a way to kind of be like fun, try to jokingly go away from those, to kind of throw away attention from maybe the real issues. And I think in 2009, that was very apparent that that didn't work, because while they were hosting the contest, it was also like I don't remember exactly, but there was this protest against like the LGBT. So that clearly shows how the impression that they are trying to convey clearly does not correspond to what's actually happening in the country. So, yeah.
If Isis or one of the other science slammers would like to comment, since it was an open question.
I'd from my research on Ukraine, soft power is a really interesting question. So when they won in 2004, and then hosting in 2005, it was the first time Ukraine were hosting and got the chance to host an international competition. When they won with Ruslana's Wild Dances, and this came out of the era of the Orange Revolution, and the slogan of that year was "Awakening." So I think that was a really interesting time for Ukraine to show themselves as a open and democratic face to the rest of Europe. Ruslana even became a icon for the revolution and joined Yushchenko's political party and became a politician. So I think that shows that interlocking of soft power in certain situations. And I think this year, if Kalush Orchestra are to win, this is another interesting and unprecedented moment for Eurovision in terms of soft power, because it will be Europe kind of voting with a kind of a belief in a song, but also a belief in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. And I think in terms of questions of where that will be hosted next year, if they do win, that will be interesting too, in terms of where soft power would intersect with that. Thank you.
Io avevo una domanda sempre per Matteo. Se dovesse vincere l'Ucraina, potremmo valutarla come una vittoria indotta dal block voting, secondo te, da una specie di block voting?
Devo tradurla o vuoi? Yeah, she asked me if Ukraine wins this year, if we can consider this victory as a political statement also because of the block voting. So she was talking about a part of my work where I talk about the block vote as a political form in the Eurovision. And I think that if Ukraine wins, it can be not because of the block vote in this case, but because of the political statement that every country shares in this moment. We were talking about the fact that many delegations, many countries protest against the EBU for the statement. So the fact that there is a common answer, a common thing on this occasion. I think that Ukraine can win because of the political statement, but also because of their performance. Because yesterday I was able to see the jury show, and I've seen the Ukrainian song, and I think it's the perfect representation of the Ukrainian tradition because there are typical instruments, typical costumes. So I think it's really good as a performance, but I don't know if they can win because now the polls are all for Ukraine, but I think because it is of the political situation, the geopolitical situation, and but I'm not sure they will win at the end. I don't know.
Can I do? Oh.
Sorry for another question, but I can't help. If Ukraine does well in the show this year, will Russia be showing all of the contest? And if Russia does not show the Ukrainian entries, will they be allowed to remain in the EBU?
Who was who has to answer?
Okay. Well, I mean, not showing the contest, like the entire contest goes against the rules set by the EBU, so it would only be fair if they are not included anymore. So yeah, I think if they don't, then goodbye.
Conducted a research called Will to Win, Russian Expert-Oriented Cultural Policy on the Eurovision. Russia won't show Eurovision since after the ban of the EBU, they did the same. They said like, well, okay, we just do not show the Eurovision. So it's like not a question already.
Interesting reflections, but we have one more question, and I think we can follow up this debate also in tomorrow's session.
Sorry, it's not a question, it's just remarks, and it could seem a little bit apart about these big questions we are debating. But how to say, sometimes when we are talking about political issues, cultural display in Eurovision, we are forgetting, in my opinion, two very important issues. One is the music industry, because Eurovision, it's not apart from music industry, it's a part of music industry. So industry, it's inside, and pull some strings because have a big marketing machine and a lot of money to do it. So, and the other part is this public service broadcasting that have some rules on displaying cultural issues, displaying their own languages, promoting music production. So it is a kind of tension. It is another layer for me. And sometimes we are debating these political issues and cultural display, but I think industry has a very important role also in these questions. So sometimes it's very difficult to be inside and to research about music industry because they don't give the permission to enter, sometimes don't give the answers that we need to have to do our research. But yeah, just a remark. It's not a question itself, but thank you.
Time has come to an end for this Science Slam, but I want to thank the three speakers, Emma, Isis, and Matteo, for your really interesting and extremely timely abstracts and papers, that shed light on a lot of important geopolitical issues and really provide us with interesting perspectives on how the EBU and Eurovision can act as a sort of quasi-regulatory body, in the face of geopolitical complications and those that we're seeing today. So thank you very much to the three of you. Pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our Science Slammers, and also thank you very much to our moderators. So we now move on to a very important moment. Europe, the lines are closed, or I should say world, the lines are closed. Sorry, some technical issues on positioning on stage. So we are now ready to announce the winner of our Science Slam, and my colleague Irving is having the honor of announcing this moment. So again, thank you to Eliza, to Celine, Emma, Isis, and Matteo. Irving, are we ready? just one moment to say thank you again to all our science slammers. All done. Well done for this moment and for your contribution. It's one of the aims of our conference to celebrate the work of early career researchers. And we hope to continue to listen to the research you are developing in our future conferences. So well done again, and thank you very much for participating. Welcome everyone to the last part of the first day of the Eurovision's conference in Turin and also online. This final part of our session is a book presentation. We will be talking with the editors and also contributors of this edited book that actually is available to pre-order by Routledge. So apologies for a little bit of advertising. So this book is called Eurovision as a Cultural Phenomenon, from the Music Halls to the Halls of Academia. The editors are Adam Dubbin, so Adam, among other positions, is an assistant professor of law at Universidad Pontificia Comillas in Madrid, Spain, where he teaches subjects related to human rights, development, and sub-Saharan Africa. Adam's scholarship explores the intersection between development and human rights. Besides the co-edited book he's going to present today, along with Dean Vuletic, Adam is also editing a book soon to be published by Routledge on the Eurovision Song Contest and human rights, which is related to his scholarly interest on the intersection between pop culture and human rights. The other editor of this book we are presenting today is Dean Vuletic. Dean, aka Professor Song Contest, is a renowned academic recognized by his scholarship work and teaching on the Eurovision Song Contest. Dean is an historian of contemporary Europe based in the Research Center for the History of Transformations at the University of Vienna. He is an author, commentator, and lecturer who specializes in topics such as Central and East Europe, the Cold War, cultural diplomacy, and popular culture. Then we have a few book contributors. First, we have with us George Cremona. George is a senior lecturer and coordinator for German and media literacy at the Faculty of Education of the University of Malta. He is also a radio and TV producer and presenter of educational programs. Since 2014, he has launched the Learning Through the Eurovision Research Project. The main aim of the project is to critically analyze how the Eurovision Song Contest can be used within classrooms to motivate students while learning and to help them develop critical skills. Then we have my colleague, Irvin Volter. So, AKA Dr. Eurovision, Irvin is addicted to the contest. He published the world's first PhD thesis on the competition back in 2006. And the curiosity of foreign popular cultures has guided his professional career as a journalist and a university lecturer researcher. He initiated in 2018 the first Eurovision's conference with Sofia Vieira Lopes, which I will introduce next. So, Sofia. Sofia is a PhD candidate in ethnomusicology at Nova University of Lisbon. She has her project funded by the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology on the national selection to the Eurovision Song Contest, the Festival RTP da Canção. And as I noted, she initiated the conference Eurovision's Perspectives from the Social Science, Humanities and the Arts with Irving. Then we have two more contributors. So Ivan Rykov. Ivan is an associate professor of music at the New School in New York, where he teaches courses on music history, theory, and interdisciplinarity arts. His scholarly work focuses on musical performance, popular culture, and perceptual practices in the arts. He co-edited A Song for Europe, Popular Music and Politics in the Eurovision Song Contest in 2007, and Another Song for Europe, Music, Taste and Values in the Eurovision Song Contest 2021 as a recent follow-up book. Finally, Robert Tobin. Robert holds the Henry J. Lear Chair in Languages, Literature, and Culture at Clark University, where he works at the intersection of LGBTQ+ studies and German studies. He is the author of several publications, but we highlight the 2007 co-edition with Ivan of A Song for Europe, Popular Music and Politics in the Eurovision Song Contest. So these are all our participants in this panel, and I will leave it to Adam to lead this presentation. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. And again, thank you to the organizers here and to all the panelists, the contributors of this book. It's rare that at an edited book release, you have basically half the contributors in one place. So it is quite exciting. Let me go back to 2005. At the age of 21 and with much more hair than I have now, I was a master's student at the University of Manchester in the UK. I walked into the common room of my dormitory residence to find about 20 students sitting around TV, cheering and bopping and excited, just as another student crossed through the hall and proclaimed in a loud voice, "Oh, this rubbish show." I sat down with the group and for the next few hours watched what I was told was called Eurovision, or the Eurovision Song Contest. The following year, I moved to Spain and found myself again in a similar situation at a Eurovision organized party with a group of friends. The purpose, though, was not to gather around and watch the show, but rather to gather around and sort of jeer and criticize the show. And this began to happen on a fairly yearly basis amongst this group of friends, but which I credit as being the spark that led me to become a fan and to generate my own interest in Eurovision. As an American, frankly, I had never seen Eurovision before. Fast forwarding a few years and now working as a human rights professor at NYU in Madrid, I had the good fortune to meet Dean at an NYU organized symposium in Berlin. Dean told me about a course he had created and taught at NYU Florence on Europe through Eurovision. And it dawned on me in this moment that this contest, which seemed to gather people around a television for a rather strange sort of fun based on laughing and criticizing, had a lot more substance and meaning than what I had originally grasped, frankly. And in fact, what probably most people grasp. But I left our discussions in Germany intrigued, but assuming that Dean's encyclopedic expertise of Eurovision and this fascinating course that he created was really limited to him and not too many others. Until I met my other co-editor, Antonio Obregón, the former vice rector of my current university, Universidad Pontificia Comillas in Madrid, whose knowledge and passion for Eurovision is equally as encyclopedic and has made him the go-to expert and commentator across Spain and on national television and radio about Eurovision. Now, as someone who ironically never much enjoyed law in its more conventional sense, especially deciphering statutes in monodisciplinary articles, along with my own intrigue and interest in Eurovision from a human rights standpoint, I was enticed by this possibility of linking law and Eurovision, which eventually became the basis of my chapter in this book. But to make a long story short, this ultimately led to Dean, Antonio, and myself coming together to create, literally just before the start of the pandemic in Europe, a symposium in my law school on Eurovision as an academic phenomenon that could have very easily become a super spreader event. No, but instead really only became the basis of this book, fortunately. So what is this book about? In recent years, the song contest, as you all know by the fact that you're here, has evolved from what the organizers had perhaps intended as a merely European-wide song contest to becoming a highly studied and taught academic phenomenon that provides a vehicle for analyzing a broad range of disciplines, such as international relations, as we heard about, women's rights, LGBTQIA+ studies, critical race theory, and many others. From Franco's refusal to send a Spanish singer, Jean-Manuel Serrat, to who wanted to sing in Catalan, to the large LGBT demographic that supports Eurovision, to concerns about the lack of racial representation, to the recent expulsion of Russia. The song contest has, according to Dean, always reflected economic, social, and technological developments across Europe. Robert Tobin, in your recent article in The Conversation, sums this up by saying, despite the popular and ephemeral nature of its song, the event has, since its inception, reflected the political culture and geopolitical realities of Europe. However, what has changed over recent decades is the increasing use of Eurovision as an academic tool to understand Europe, which has led to an outgrowth of journal publications, conferences, and classes organized around the song contest, which seeks to provide a new and useful multidisciplinary lens into Europe. Drawing from a wealth of academic literature about Eurovision written over the last 2 decades, the aim of this book, which includes a foreword by Martin Oesterdale, the executive supervisor of the ESC, is to consolidate and recognize Eurovision's relevance in academia by analyzing its contribution to different fields of study. The book brings together the leading Eurovision scholars, many of whom are here with us today from across disciplines, to reflect on this intersection between their academic fields of study and the song contest. The book draws from fields rarely associated with Eurovision, such as law, business, research methodologies, to demonstrate the song contest's broad utility, both in academia and in professional settings, such as how Eurovision voting can be relevant for boardroom decision-making. The central questions which the book seeks to answer are: how has Eurovision evolved from a mere song contest into an academic phenomenon? What has Eurovision contributed to the different fields of study included in this book? And how does Eurovision serve as a pedagogical tool for teaching European-focused subject matter? So with that said, I think maybe rather than talk about my chapter, I'll hand it over to Dean to then say a few words. So, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you to Adam for coming up with this idea, and to all of our colleagues for contributing to this volume. It really was a pleasure to work on it, and also to produce a volume that can tell us about this booming industry, let's say, in Eurovision studies in the academic world, and what it can actually give the academic world, what it can change. So not just how this can be an entertaining tool to teach Europe, or to try to explain the politics of Europe, but how it can change different fields, and how our research, our study of Eurovision can even change the contest ourselves and itself. And actually, I have to address Karen Fricke here. She was one of the earliest scholars to work on Eurovision. And just as an example of what we can do as academics, in 2017, Karen and I were invited to speak to the Eurovision Reference Group and to advise them then on the flag policy that they were wishing to adopt and some other matters. So in this sense, the EBU is also willing to listen to academics and willing to listen to our contributions, willing to also engage with our novel research. And in this sense, I do really want to emphasize that this book was conceived in this regard as a way in which we can demonstrate how we have an impact on, like I said, different fields, but also the contest itself. Now, I came into Eurovision as a historian, and in my introductory chapter to the book, I focus on Italy and the unique role that Italy has played in the development of the contest, including in its creation. And here I also point out that one of the things that we need to do in history as academic historians is also to redress the myths and even the prejudices that have been spread by amateur historians who have so far dominated the historical narrative of the contest, in collusion with journalists who love to present the sensationalist aspects of Eurovision, many of which I try to address in my book and to prove were not true. So, for example, even the basic idea that Marcel Besançon was the founder of Eurovision is not true. The idea came from Rai. It was developed through meetings in the EBU. He was the founder of the Eurovision network, but not of the song contest. And then there's this idea that I always get asked by journalists about Eurovision somehow being created to forge a European identity, which is completely not true. I went through the documents, historical documents, through the writings of these EBU officials, and they never talk about it that way. It's always in technical terms. This was a group of media professionals who wanted to put together a show that would experiment with the nascent technology of television and produce cooperation in the making of television programs. So this is the role of the historian, let's say, when it comes to Eurovision studies. And we have a lot of different fields represented in this book, which was deliberate, of course, and which is the strength of the book. So from history, we also move on to political science with articles from colleagues in Australia, cultural studies, also from Jess Carniel and Chris Hay in Australia, media studies from Mari Pajala in Finland, who was a pioneer in writing about Eurovision. Then we get new fields involved, such as law, and Adam gives a good example of how research on Eurovision can also change the way we think about law and the way we teach law. We, of course, have our musicologists represented, very fascinating perspectives on journalism from Irving, and how fan journalism and professional journalists have clashed and in the history of Eurovision, but in recent times have perhaps benefited from cooperation with each other. This year brings a new chapter to that story, obviously. And yeah, then from George, Ivan, and Robert, we have other chapters which they'll talk about, but I was especially happy that Robert and Ivan could join us because they edited the first ever book on Eurovision, and you know, they were pioneers in Eurovision scholarship, like Karen as well, and George too, who gives us the perspective from one of Europe's smaller participants in Eurovision, but one in which the contest has a huge following. And it's not just Sweden in which the whole country is crazy about Eurovision, but Malta as well. So these are all the different perspectives that we bring together. We hope that the book will be used by other academics on Eurovision who are teaching about the phenomenon, and who might want some sort of inspiration for how they can use Eurovision in their teaching and research. We're very glad that Martin Österdahl agreed to write the preface to the book, which again shows that, you know, we do have people at the EBU listening to what we do. We aren't just academics who work in isolation and do it to entertain and please ourselves, but that we're trying, you know, to have a broader public impact. So that's it from my side. Perhaps, Adam, you'd like to introduce? Should I introduce the speakers, the presenters, or they can do it themselves?
Go down.
Why don't we start with Sophia and just go like this, simply? But the other one. Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of the scholars that contribute to the book. It's an honor, of course, because I'm working mostly about the Portuguese contest and the Portuguese national selection, of course, always linked to the Eurovision Song Contest, but publishing mostly in Portuguese. So it's very important to spread the word in English. We know it's a lingua franca, but it is very important to spread the word and to have new audiences and to have this knowledge wide knowledge about the Eurovision Song Contest. So I'm very glad to be part of the group. And I'm very anxious to read all the chapters. So yeah. And I have to start just with these remarks. I shared the chapter with my supervisor, Professor João Soeiro de Carvalho of the Nova University of Lisbon. And we are musicologists, we are ethnomusicologists. So our goal is to convey how Eurovision Song Contest it's a perfect example of how ethnomusicology can encompass several layers of this complex event. So we were dealing for several years with this prejudice that Eurovision has in academia. In my first year studying, I had to explain in the university why I am doing this, even for ethnomusicologists, even for popular music studies. So for me, it's obvious, but for others was not. So I had to explain, and we stressed in our chapter how it could be important, how it could be relevant for the ethnomusicology. So we start with this idea of music or music behavior. We use also the expression expressive behavior because music is not the sound, only the sound. Music is the performance, also is the all talks, all concepts, and whole behaviors linked to music sound. So for us, ethnomusicologists, it's very important not only to study the sound in this technical way with musical analysis, but of course, and very important is what people think about it, how people behave with music, and which behavior are influencing music practices. So we took the example of Salvador Sobral, the only Portuguese winner. So it's a good example. Of course, it changed also this winning, changed the way of Portuguese people view Eurovision Song Contest. This is why we chose also. And if you look at Salvador's performance on stage and off stage, you see these several behaviors expressing their own, his own values and ideas. Values about music, values about what Eurovision is, and what Eurovision could be. You see, I don't know if you remember the speech, the winning speech. Everyone was very surprised, at least in Portugal, because we are hoping for, oh, thank you, oh, what a surprise, or something like that. But no, Salvador used that time to stress his ideas about music and about music in this huge media event. So this is our goal is we have to analyze the sound, of course, the music, and we present a music analysis, but the all layers that we can encompass in our studies. Of course, we are not super women or men, so yeah, it's just a tiny part of the story, but we have to bring this multi-layered analysis. So we present some data of music analysis, video analysis, interviews. It's very important, the interviews with several stakeholders, such as the musicians, as well as people on national broadcaster, because they have the decision to do the contest, to participate, to have some ideas about what it could be, as well as archival research. I was digging in lots of papers, and of course, field work. It's very important for ethnomusicology, and it is a way of conveying our own experience. So this is why I decided in the book to have tiny parts of my own experience on Eurovision that year. So it's very personal, very ethnographic, I think. So this is our way of doing stuff, and we wanted to convey this in the book. So I think for more, you have to read the book. So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to participate.
I was not expecting to be in the line so quickly. Well, the personal experience in Eurovision is something that, in fact, took me not only to become a journalist, but also to become a scholar. And it was at that time very difficult to convince my professors about the importance of Eurovision. So, dear fellow science learners, I think we have all experienced the same. When I was asked to contribute to this book, I was immediately thinking of my personal way to Eurovision, through Eurovision, and how I got there. It was, in fact, a coincidence that led me in 1992 to the press center of the German host broadcaster, not so easy, MDR at that time. And it was, in fact, we were looking for the entrance door for the venue. And if you have been to Magdeburg at that time, closely after the fall of the Iron Curtain, you can understand that it was not so easy to find the way through. And we ended up in the press center. And immediately a woman was asking, yeah, you're coming here for press accreditation to Malmö? I said, press accreditation? Malmö? What do you want from me? And she forced us literally to sign the paper to apply for an accreditation. And since at that time I was president of the German OGE branch, I thought, yeah, this would be a good opportunity to do some coverage for our magazine. And I dived into a completely new world. If I think of how the press centers are looking now, we have here an example of the Press Center 2022 in Turin. And I was digging a little bit. I couldn't find a picture of the Press Center back in 92, but in 93, it looked like that. So this was the press center, and I was wondering at the time, why should I, if I'm a journalist, work under these conditions? And that's lots of journalists who might have thought this, because in fact, there were maybe 10% real journalists and 90% invited people that have been caught in the trap of the host broadcasters who wanted them to come there and to show that the artists are not presenting their songs in front of empty seats. So you can imagine the press conferences at that time, they were horrible. It was silence for minutes until finally head of delegation was grabbing the mic and so if you're not going to ask questions, I'm going to do it. It was a very funny thing. And by time, when there were more and more fans accredited and also developing their journalistic skills, because if you wanted to have an accreditation, you also had to show that you are working for a newspaper. And this was the first thing I did when I wanted accreditation for Mill Street. And the newspapers were very thankful that there was someone going there, that they didn't have to pay for the travel, they didn't have to pay for the hotel, and they got a newspaper article for very, very low money. This led at some point to a conflictual situation when Eurovision was becoming more and more popular at the beginning of the 2000s. And the, let's say, real journalist felt that the fan journalists would take away their opportunities to do good interviews, to get press material, and so on. The end is or has been up to now, a positive one, because nowadays the established journalists from the big newspapers, they are relying on the fan journalists to get some facts, to get some background stories that they would never be able to investigate in the short time they're here. So it looks like a positive end, but this year the situation has shifted, and we'll see how this is gonna look like in 2, 3, 4 years, maybe in another scholarly book. In the meantime, you have to read the full articles. I'm not gonna tell you everything, and I'm not gonna show all the interesting pictures from press centers. So I hand over to...
Thank you, Irving.
Can I just stand up so that I can see the pictures as well? Thank you. So when the editors contacted me to write this contribution, I was very excited because this gave me the opportunity to share insights about which came out from the learning project, the Eurovision, Learning through the Eurovision learning project, which has still now had over 100 invites since it's by 100 schools, not only in Malta, but also around around Europe, including Ukraine, including Switzerland, Sweden, here in Italy, and other countries where the Eurovision Song Contest did take place. Basically, what I'm going to do in this very short time is I will share insights with you how material from the Eurovision Song Contest is used to promote values which are propagated by the European Union. However, this project always involves students at the center, teachers as well at the center, and also they assume a critical role. Even those who do not like the Eurovision Song Contest can have their say. As Adam was saying, not everyone follows, not everyone likes, but this gives us as well in class the opportunity to work with from primary children to secondary school children to university students, and they have a say. And while learning a language or while learning other content, even including mathematics, including social studies, for example, we use this material from the Eurovision Song Contest to promote values from the European Union. So, for example, I would like you to just look at the next slide and have a guess who this could be. Who could this be? So let's move to the second slide. This is the hair, this is the neck of the same artist. Very far. No. No. Let's look at the eyes. Who's that? No, it's a participant of the Eurovision, a winner of the Eurovision Song Contest. Conchita Wurst, very good. And actually, through Conchita and through the messages she also transmitted not only during the Eurovision Song Contest, but afterwards, we discuss with students about the right of individuals to be free from the discrimination of the basis of sex and sexual orientation. Let's move to the second artist. No, this one, I have a clue. This includes numbers. It's something related to the Eurovision Song Contest. It includes numbers, and it features every year. Tonight we will see this. What is it? It comes at the very voting, and what do we see? The number. The scores, the scoreboard. Very good. And through the scoreboard, we do activities related to, we discuss with these students as well. Yes, that's the right of individuals to be free from discrimination on the basis of nationality, how people vote, the idea of neighbors, whether it's what students think, what research shows. So let's go to the third thing, to the third aspect. What's this? Whose nose is this and whose Estonia? And very good, Ken. Thank you very much. Okay, why? He is, let's go to the second, to the next one. Whose hand and whose hat? Very good, and these are through these and through Dave Benton and other singers, we discuss about the right of individuals to be free from discrimination on the basis of age. Next slide. What is this? Someone is wearing something on her neck. She's also a winner. Lena, very good. And actually, she wore a Tau cross there, and Stru Gabbani, for example, who spoke about Occidentalis Karma. And even though in the Eurovision there is also this rule regarding keeping away from discrimination from religions and even I mentioned, but these are also, these artists give us an opportunity to discuss with our students and to let them discuss about the right of individuals to be free from discrimination on the basis of religion. We're reaching towards the end. Next one. And now, next slide. Okay, so they were 4 and they had less time. Their song was a bit shorter. Very good. Okay, and this allows us to speak as well about ability, not disability, about how the context always gives space to abilities, not to highlight disabilities. One last factor. These are the 2 singers. They had the same song title, Amber in Malta and Georgia, and their name, the song was Warrior. Very good. And this allows us to even give the students the opportunity, what would happen, what's justice, what's not. And one last clip. This time I want to make you hear this. Who's this? From Australia. Well done. Through Daniam and her participation, we always as well give students this opportunity to discuss about should Australia be taking part, America, Canada, and also her features. For example, what's European today? Are there European features? Are there European? And this gives us the opportunity to talk about the right of individuals to be free from discrimination on the basis of ethnic and racial origins. I won't say the conclusions, so that, as the other authors have highlighted, we invite you to read all those in the book. Thank you for this opportunity and for your participation.
Thank you for this wonderful panel and this collection. It's exciting to see the work continuing over the years. I'll speak a little bit about my chapter, which is really an old dinosaur. I wrote about the mythology of song contests and going back to Greek antiquity, back to mythology. And a shout out to my song contest class this semester. We did this history from the beginning, from Plato, Aristotle, and mythology up to the Eurovision and now the American Song Contest too, as disappointing as that was. But I'll present just a little bit from my chapter, listening to a little bit of music by J.S. Bach, talking about dinosaurs. And the topic here is the continual debate that we still see between sentimental ballads and fun, dancey, boppy dance songs. So if you show the first slide in my video, just the picture, pause here, please. Here we have a painting of the contest between Apollo and Pan. Oh, go back just to the painting. Can you go back to the painting? Yeah, thank you. You can see Pan here on the left with the panpipes, and his competitor Apollo here with the lyre in front. Behind Pan is one of the judges, Midas, and the other judge with the long staff and the white hair is Timalis. And this is the song contest that Bach captured from the story in Ovid, from Metamorphoses, the contest between Pan and Apollo. And Bach wrote this cantata in 1729 to sort of tell this story, a secular cantata. So next slide, please. Just let the video play until the next image. Yes, you can pause it there for a second. The Bach piece is called Geschwinde, ihr wirbelnde Winde, which means hurry, you whirling winds, BWV 209. And I'll show you little bits from the cantata to illustrate this story. First, you'll see the setup for the cantata, for the contest. And this is a disagreement between Apollo, whose name is Phoebus in this piece, and Pan. Phoebus is basically saying, why do you want to compete with me? I'm the best. And Pan is saying that his music is worth listening to as well. So just a little clip in the video.
Bist doch so unverschämt und frei, mir in das Angesicht zu sagen, dass dein Gesang viel herrlicher als meiner sei.
And then pause it here for a second. Apollo is basically saying that his music is more noble, more tragic, has much more sophistication to it. And as Bach sets the song by Apollo, you'll hear that it's in a minor key, and it's about verlangen, which is longing. Notice how Bach stretches the middle syllable of verlangen, lang, as a kind of musical text painting. He stretches it very long, just like longing and desire are communicated through that word. Bach sets it musically that way. The story in this song is Apollo's love for Hyacinth, and the pleasure he feels in stroking Hyacinth's hair and touching his soft cheeks. And the backstory here is that they were lovers, but Zephyrus, the west wind, killed Hyacinth with the discus, and Apollo is mourning his death. A little clip from that aria then. And if you can pause it on the painting of Pan here for a second. That was your sentimental ballad, and Pan's song is very different. It's music of earthy and earthly inspirations, has a strong general popular appeal, especially because it's music for dancing. It's in a major key in the galant style. It has a prancing triple meter, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's marked allegretto scherzando, which is a lively musical joke. And notice in the first part of the aria here, it's really just one sentence that Pan repeats over and over again about dancing and leaping around. And the little pun here is the verb wackeln, which in German means to wiggle, or to shake your hips and your booty. And Bach repeats the first syllable of that word, vak, kak, 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 kind of like the quacks of a waddling duck.
Tanze, zu Sprünge, so wackelt das Herz. Zu Tanze, zu Sprünge, so wackelt das Herz. Zu Tanze, zu Sprünge, zu Tanze, zu Sprünge, zu Sprünge, zu Tanze, so wackelt das Herz. Zu Tanze, zu Sprünge, zu Tanze, zu Sprünge, so wackelt das Herz. Zu Tanze, zu Sprünge, so wackelt das Herz.
There's Pan with the wild dancing that he inspires. And then here we have the judges. That was the Boppy dance song. And the two judges, Tamalis and Midas, are discussing their verdict here. Over to the next slide. Basically, Tamalis says, Phoebus has really carried the prize here with his beautiful, sentimental, sophisticated song. And over to the next slide. Midas says, no, I think it's Pan, actually, because his song was much easier to appreciate and to learn, and he sings for everybody. But note, Midas says, to my ears, Pan's song is the best, and Bach gives donkey praise to the word ears. In the music, Bach paints Midas's pronouncement with this kind of hee-haw in the orchestra part. And this is the conclusion. Everyone's making fun of Midas.
Verkehr ich dich in Rahmen, soll ich dich schinden oder schamen? Ach, plaget mich doch nicht so sehr, es fiel mir ja also in mein Gehör.
And the verdict is that Phoebus gives Midas the ears of a donkey.
Das ist der Lohn der tollen Ehrbegehrigkeit. Warum hast du diesen Streit auf leichte Schultern übernommen? Ist mir die Kommission so schlecht bekommen?
How badly this appointment has turned out for me. So next time you watch the scoring in the Eurovision Song Contest, feel a little pity for the judges and the jury who end up with the donkey ears.
Is it on? Yes. Okay, great. Good. So Ivan asked me to follow him because he's working on the more historical text. My paper is called Queer Camp Against Franco, Ivan Zulueta's Un, Dos, Tres. And a lot of us have mentioned Malmö 2013. I actually started this paper then, so some of you might actually, if you remember that, might remember some of the lines. But I promise I haven't been giving it over and over again. It really did just sit for 10 years, and then I decided it was time to turn it into something. So I have two main interests to begin with. First of all, we think it's the first extensive parody of the Eurovision Song Contest. It comes in 1967. The film, no, 1969, excuse me. And then secondly, in a related way, I was concerned with I've been irritated for a lot of my academic life with Susan Sontag's claim that camp is depoliticized and disengaged. So I wanted to think about the possibility of rehabilitating camp as a political activity. And what made me, for reasons I'll explain after the clip, it made me think that maybe if we used Walter Benjamin's idea of the possibilities of the mechanical reproduction of the artwork to create progressive change, that we could actually see a way that camp could become more political. So I'm going to show you a clip, and then I'm going to just give very short 4 points. So I promise this won't go on forever. But let me just set up the clip. So the premise is that there's this contest called Mundo Canal, which is obviously based on Eurovision. And its composer, Marina de Obregon, no relationship to the co-editor, is going to sing it and play it. But then afterwards, they're going to find a band to perform it. And the announcer that you're going to see, Jose Maria Inigo, would actually later be one of the Eurovision announcers in Spain at various points. So there's a kind of interesting overlap. Now, this doesn't have subtitles, but if you don't know Spanish, that's actually fine. You'll be able to understand. It's just focus on the language, the body language, and the editing. And what I'm interested in encouraging you to look at is the campiness of it. Think about why it's campy, and then also think about the mechanical reproduction of art. So I'm going to turn off my thing, and we will listen to this for about 2 minutes or so.
A una a la derecha, más. Silencio en el plató. ¿Listo, López? La señorita Obregón que no se mueva de su sitio. Grabamos.
Amigos telespectadores, faltan todavía 15 días para el Festival de la Canción de Mundo Canal. Pero ya podemos anunciar a ustedes la melodía que nos representará con todos los honores. Atención, amigos. Su título, Mentira, Mentira. Y su autora, la encantadora señorita Marina de Obregón. Díganos, Marina, sabemos que el intérprete está aún sin designar. ¿A quién daría su voto?
Mentira, mentira. Mentira, mentira. Es una canción de corte moderno, pero melódica. Yo creo que a cualquier conjunto de los muchos y muy buenos que tenemos le iría muy bien.
Pues dejemos buscando a los seleccionadores ese conjunto ideal y oigamos entre tanto la canción interpretada por su propia autora. Para todos ustedes, una primicia mundial. Mentira, mentira.
Venga.
No, pincha.
Mentira, mentira, mentira fue tu amor. Mentira, mentira fue aquel día de sol. Y fue mentira aquel tiempo feliz en que vivimos tú y yo. Fueron mentiras tus besos, tus risas y aquella fingida pasión. Palabras al azar, palabras al viento, perdidas en el mar. Y ahora me buscas y te vuelves loco al verme reír. Y ya no te acuerdas de cuánto me has hecho sufrir. Me has hecho sufrir. Me has hecho sufrir con tus palabras. Mentira, mentira, aquel tiempo feliz.
Amigos telespectadores, esta es la canción que nos va a representar en el Festival de Mundo Canal. ¡Chao, amigos!
Okay, so that last person you saw, he runs a alternative music company, and they are horrified by this. So it's a little bit like the New Italy and the Old Italy we were talking about. So they are going to create a terrorist band, and this is the whole rest of the movie, to kill all the possible singers who could possibly perform this song. And then at the very end, they get on the stage of Mundo Canal and they terroristically destroy that in front of the audience as well. So just 4 points then, very quickly, about the things that I learned about this and wanted to do. So one, just personally, I kind of fell in love with Zulueta, and he's generally seen as this kind of failed artist, kind of ground down by the Franco era. He became a heroin addict. He's most famous for Arabeto, which is about heroin and a very, well, it's about cameras that act vampirically and suck the life out of actual humans. But it has a subtext of heroin and a very kind of traumatized homosexuality. And I just wanted to kind of be part of a movement to resurrect this film, which is lighthearted and joyous and not like that. Secondly, I discovered, although I'm not an expert in Spain, but in this late Franco era, there's a lot of queer spaces, and particularly in the film industry. And so I won't go into that here, but it's a little bit in the chapter. But then my main interest was this question of camp and politics. So Susan Sontag is famous for saying, yep, camp is disengaged and depoliticized, but she also says that camp is how to be a dandy in the age of mass culture. And Susan Sontag is a popularizer of Benjamin in the States. So I kind of thought that all this mass culture we saw here and this reproduction of the art mechanically might give us a hint as to how popular culture could, in fact, have a political tendency. And then finally, the fourth point is just how this all gets back to the ESC. Generally, when people say that Eurovision is campy, they mean it in that depoliticized way, and I think it's possible it isn't. And also, the ESC is not always the good guy in this. Sometimes it is the one that needs to be the subject of political critique. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not really going to talk about my chapter then. I'll just very quickly say that it deals with the human rights aspect of Eurovision, and it looks at how the formal mechanisms, particularly the UN treaty bodies and the universal periodic review processes, have shed light on certain human rights violations that have occurred. And it looks at ultimately how Eurovision and the EBU can ultimately strengthen their response through what I divide into soft, medium, and hard interventionist approaches to human rights violations. But that's all I'll say. You can read the chapter. In any case, I just want to thank everyone here for their wonderful chapters, for being here today with us. I think, again, in the little sort of excerpts that we've gotten today, you can see, again, the brilliance behind each of these chapters, and what I frankly think is a fascinating and interesting book that hopefully becomes an important part of Eurovision literature. So once again, thank you to all of you for participating, to my co-editor, Dean, to Antonio Obregon, and to all of you, and certainly the organizers. So thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
So this brings us to the conclusion of our session today. And as you've seen, there's a lot to read. So pre-order the book. And continuing following the amazing research that both early career and established researchers are doing on the Eurovision Song Contest. And to know a little bit more, Join us again tomorrow, same place, same time. And thank you again to all of you online and here in the room. And also thank you to our host, the University degli Studi di Torino. Thank you much, everyone. See you tomorrow.